My husband humiliated me in front of a ballroom full of donors. Then the new CEO stepped right past him, took both my hands, and pressed a silver-embossed business card into my palm like it was a receipt. He leaned close enough that I could smell his cologne and said, "Call me," and every single person within 10 feet heard it. I didn't even notice the pain until later, when the bruise bloomed on my upper arm where my husband yanked me away, purple and undeniable. My stomach dropped so hard the room went silent. Then my husband's glass hit the marble floor and cracked like a gunshot. And right when I thought I might actually die of embarrassment, the CEO looked straight at me and said he'd been searching for me for 30 years. Rewind to Tuesday morning when Grant suddenly demanded I attend the gala. He didn't ask. Grant doesn't really do ask. I was standing in our kitchen in the suburbs, still in slippers, still half asleep, trying to get the coffee going without rattling anything too loud. Because his moods, you learn the little rules. You learn what sounds set him off. You learn what days he likes his eggs a certain way. You learn to keep your body small, like you can take up less air. Grant walked in already dressed for the day, pressed shirt, that expensive watch he likes to flash, scrolling on his phone like the world was personally texting him for permission. He said, "You're coming with me tonight." Not hello, not good morning, just that. I blinked at him. "Tonight? Where?" "The Blackwell Industries Gala." He said it like I should have been grateful, like he was doing me a favor, taking me out of my little corner of life and letting me exist in public for a few hours. I tried to keep my voice normal. I really did. "Grant, I don't have anything to wear to something like that." He finally looked up from his phone. Just one slow glance, like he was measuring how much trouble I was about to be. "Then find something." I set the coffee scoop down carefully. "We're not talking about a church dinner. This is—" "Don't start." He pinched the bridge of his nose like I was exhausting. "New CEO. Big turnout. Everybody's going. I need to make the right impression." That word. Need. He didn't say, "I want you there because I enjoy you." He didn't say, "It'll be fun." He said need like I was a prop he had to dust off. "Okay," I said, because that's what comes out of my mouth most days. "Okay, sure, fine." Grant's eyes flicked to the counter where my phone was charging, and "Don't embarrass me." There it was, the real sentence. Don't embarrass me. I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself. He went right back to tapping on his screen, already done with me, and added, "Buy something cheap." I'm not wasting money on one night. Cheap, like he hadn't bought himself a tux that cost more than my first car. I felt my cheeks heat up, even alone in my kitchen. That old, familiar shame. I hate that shame. It's sticky. It clings. He walked out, and I stood there staring at the coffee pot like it had personally betrayed me. Stay in the back. Don't embarrass me. Those two lines had basically been our marriage vows. So I did what I always do when he corners me with a demand. I made it a task. If I made it practical, it hurt less. Grant controlled the money in a way that never looked dramatic from the outside. We had a joint account at Chase, sure. People heard that and assumed it meant partnership. What it meant was Grant had the login on his phone, and I didn't. What it meant was he'd transfer my allowance to a little side checking account like he was feeding a parking meter. $200 a month. That was my budget for anything that wasn't groceries he approved. And I'm not stupid. I know exactly what that is. It's a leash. Around late morning, I drove my old Toyota Camry. Silver, a little beat up, paid off. The one thing he couldn't take credit for, because it's been mine since before the marriage felt like a trap. Down toward the shops off Colorado Boulevard. I didn't go to Cherry Creek. I didn't even let my mind wander there. I went to the places where you can still find something decent if you're willing to dig. Goodwill. A consignment store tucked between a payday loan place and a frozen yogurt shop. A rack of dresses under fluorescent lights that make everything look tired. I held up one black dress after another. Checking seams like that mattered more than the fact my hands were shaking. I kept seeing Grant's face in my head, that disgusted little curl at the corner of his mouth. I wasn't shopping for joy. I was shopping to avoid punishment. I ended up with a navy dress that actually fit my body like it remembered I used to be a person. Long sleeves, simple neckline, modest, not trying too hard. The tag said $45. $45. That's what my worth cost that day. The cashier asked if I wanted a bag. I said yes, then immediately regretted it, because now I had to carry proof of how cheap it was. Receipt. Always a receipt. I drove home and hid the bag in the closet like it was contraband. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the closed door, listening for Grant's car in the driveway, like a teenager waiting for a curfew crackdown. When he got home, he didn't even take his shoes off before he called, "Let me see it." He wanted the dress like he owned it, like he owned the night. I pulled it out, held it up by the hanger. Grant's mouth twisted. "That? It's nice," I said. "It's clean, it fits." He stepped closer, pinched the fabric between two fingers like it might contaminate him. "You look like you're going to a job interview at a bank." I swallowed. "It's a gala. People with money wear money," he snapped. "Not whatever this is." My hands tightened on the hanger. "It was $45. He laughed, short and mean. "Exactly." Then he leaned in, close enough that I could see the tiny red veins around his eyes, and said, "Stay in the back. I'm serious. Don't talk. Don't wander. Just be there." Be there, like furniture. That was the first controversial moment. Right there, the one where I knew, really knew, he didn't want a wife. He wanted a shadow. Comment below. If your spouse told you to stay in the back in public, what would you do? Go anyway or refuse? He walked away like the conversation was settled, and I stood in the bedroom holding that navy dress like it was heavier than it should have been. Here's the thing. You can get used to a lot. You can normalize a lot. You can tell yourself it's not that bad because he's not hitting you, because he pays the bills, because you have a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And then a sentence lands a little different than the others. "Stay in the back." Something in me went, "Oh? So that's my place." That afternoon, I got ready slowly, like I was wading through syrup. I pinned my hair back the way I used to when I worked outside the house, back when I had coworkers and lunches and reasons to wear mascara. I put on the navy dress. It didn't look cheap. It looked like me, which is probably why Grant hated it. I touched the silver locket I always wear. It's small, simple, nothing flashy. People have asked me before what's inside, and I always say, just a picture, and change the subject. It's not just a picture. It's a whole life that almost happened. Grant came into the bedroom in his tux like he was starring in a movie about himself. He glanced at me, and his eyes did that quick scan. Dress, hair, shoes, like he was checking a spreadsheet. "You'll do," he said. "Not pretty, not beautiful. You'll do." I grabbed my little purse, slipped my iPhone SE inside, and followed him out like I was stepping into weather I couldn't control. The drive downtown was quiet except for the classical station he likes when he's trying to look sophisticated. He kept one hand on the wheel and one on his phone, thumbs moving fast, probably sending messages to people who actually mattered to him. I watched the city get taller through the windshield. Denver at night always looks gorgeous from a distance. Lights, glass, all that promise. Up close, it's still a city, still messy, still real. Grant pulled up to a downtown hotel, big, polished valet line out front, and handed the keys to a kid who looked too young to be trusted with a BMW. "Smile," Grant said through his teeth as we walked in. So I did. I smiled, like I always do, like a trained thing. The ballroom was bright enough to make my eyes water. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, people in suits and gowns moving in clusters like schools of fish. The smell was perfume and wine and those little floral arrangements they put on every table to make the room feel expensive. Grant immediately started scanning for opportunity. He didn't hold my hand. He didn't even keep me beside him. He drifted toward a group of men talking near the bar and angled his body to wedge into their circle like a crowbar. Then he turned back to me, pointed with two fingers toward a spot near the wall, half behind a tall plant and a cocktail table, and said, "Stand there." Just like that. I walked to the spot he chose, because my feet did what they'd been trained to do. I stood near the shadows, watching people laugh and sip and talk about things that never touch my life anymore. He wanted me invisible. Mission accomplished. From my corner, I could see Grant working. He shook hands too hard. He laughed too loud. He told stories that weren't really stories, more like bragging disguised as conversation. Every now and then, he'd glance over at me like he was checking a coat on a hook. I stared down at my hands, at the navy sleeves, at the simple little bracelet I'd owned since before Grant, and I tried not to think about how ridiculous it felt to be in a room like that when I couldn't even buy myself a dress without permission. Then the energy in the room changed. It was subtle at first, voices dipping, heads turning, a ripple moving from the entrance toward the center of the ballroom, like when a storm hits a lake and the surface goes tight. People started straightening their posture. Men adjusted their jackets. Women set their champagne flutes down like they didn't want to be caught mid-sip in a photograph. Grant's head snapped toward the doors. He muttered, "That's him." I didn't know why my stomach clenched before I even saw who him was. I just knew something was coming. A man stepped into the ballroom with the kind of presence that doesn't need introduction. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair with a little silver at the temples. Not flashy, not loud, just certain, like he belonged at the center of any room he walked into. The new CEO. And then someone said his name near me like it was a headline. Evan Blackwell. The name hit me so hard I actually swayed. No. 30 years. I hadn't said that name out loud in decades. I'd packed it away with other things I couldn't survive remembering. But hearing it in a bright Denver ballroom, hearing it connected to power and money and this present-day world, it felt like the floor moved. I backed up, deeper into my little corner, trying to make myself smaller than the plant, smaller than the wall, smaller than the air. I pulled my purse closer, like it could hide me. My heart was doing that ugly, frantic pounding, like it wanted out. I told myself it couldn't be him. Plenty of men exist. Plenty of men have dark hair. Plenty of men walk with confidence. But then he turned slightly, and the light caught his face, and my brain did what brains do when they recognize something they never stopped holding on to. It was him. Evan. My Evan. My chest tightened, my mouth went dry. I could barely breathe, and I was terrified someone would notice I was falling apart in a room full of people who did not care. Grant started moving fast, practically jogging toward Evan, smoothing his tux jacket, putting on that eager grin like he was about to shake hands with God. I watched from my corner as Grant reached him. Grant held out his hand. Evan looked at it and didn't take it. Not right away. Instead, Evan's eyes moved past Grant, scanning the room like he wasn't even hearing whatever nonsense Grant was saying. His gaze slid across tables, across faces, across glittering dresses and expensive suits. And then it landed on me. Locked. It felt like someone grabbed the back of my neck. Time didn't slow down like a movie. It got sharper. Every sound got loud. Every laugh became too bright. Every clink of glass sounded like a warning. Evan's eyes widened, not in a polite way, in a there you are way. Grant was still talking, still holding out that handshake, still trying to force a moment that wasn't his to control. Evan stepped around Grant like he was furniture. Just bypassed him. I watched Grant's grin freeze, like his face forgot how to perform. Evan walked straight toward my corner. I should have moved. I should have run to the bathroom, slipped out a side door, vanished the way I did 30 years ago. But my body didn't listen. My feet stayed planted. Because part of me, the part I've kept buried under chores and rules and silence, wanted to be found. Evan stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could see the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes, close enough that I could see his throat work when he swallowed. He didn't look at my dress. He didn't look at my age. He looked at my face like it was the only real thing in the room. And then he took my hands. Both of them. Warm, steady grip, not possessive, not yanking, just holding, like he needed to confirm I wasn't a hallucination. Grant's voice cracked behind him. "Excuse me, sir." Evan didn't turn around. He said, very calmly, "I need to speak with your wife." My pulse jumped so hard I saw stars. Grant stepped closer. "That's my—" Evan finally looked over his shoulder, and the temperature in the air dropped. "I know exactly who she is." The room was watching now. You can feel it. When a crowd turns into one big set of eyes, you can feel the attention sliding over your skin. I wanted to melt into the carpet. Evan looked back at me, and his voice went quiet, but not private. People still heard it. That's what still makes my stomach twist when I replay it. He said, "I've been looking for you for 30 years. I felt my eyes sting instantly. I hated that. I hated tears. Tears are evidence, and evidence makes you vulnerable. Grant made a sharp sound, like a laugh, but wrong. "This is inappropriate." Evan didn't flinch. "No, what's inappropriate is that you've had her standing in the shadows." Grant's face went red so fast it was almost scary. "She's fine." Evan's thumb brushed the side of my hand, and the gentleness of it made me want to sob right there, in front of donors and executives and strangers. Evan said, "I still love you." There it was. No softening. No, "I'm sorry." No easing into it. Just the truth dropped like a weight. The ballroom went silent, the kind of silence that feels like pressure. And then Grant's champagne glass slipped out of his hand. It hit the marble floor and shattered. It sounded like a gunshot. Every head turned. People froze mid-breath. Somebody near the front actually gasped. Grant's jaw worked like he was chewing rage. And Evan, still holding my hands, pulled a business card out of his suit pocket. Thick paper, silver embossing that caught the chandelier light. He pressed it into my palm and folded my fingers around it like he was making sure I couldn't drop it. "Call me," he said, "tonight." Receipt in my hand. Witnesses everywhere. Grant lunged forward, and for the first time all night, he sounded scared. "Diane, come here." He used my name like a command. Evan's eyes stayed on mine. "You don't have to do what he says." My throat closed up, because that sentence, simple as it is, felt illegal in my life. Grant reached for my arm, and here's where it went from humiliating to dangerous. His fingers clamped hard, right above my elbow, and he yanked me toward him like I was luggage. Pain shot down my arm. I made a small sound I couldn't control. Grant hissed, "Now." Evan's face changed. Not loud, not dramatic, but his eyes went cold in a way I'd never seen before. He took one step forward, and the men around them shifted, like they suddenly remembered who held the power in this room. Evan said, "Take your hand off her." Grant tried to laugh it off. "This is my wife." Evan said, "Not like that." Grant's grip tightened for half a second, pure reflex, pure possessiveness. Then he let go, because the room was watching, and he cares about the room more than he cares about me. Grant grabbed my wrist instead and started dragging me through the crowd, his smile pasted on for anyone who might be looking like we were just stepping out for air. My fingers clenched around the card so hard the edge dug into my skin. "Don't panic. Don't cry." Grant pulled me out into the hallway, away from music and chandeliers and witnesses. The second the ballroom doors swung closed, his face changed completely. He leaned in, teeth bared, voice low. What the hell was that? I tried to breathe. "Grant, Don't." His eyes flicked down to my hand. "Give me that." I curled my fingers tighter around the card. It was such a tiny act of defiance, and it scared me how much it mattered. He reached again, and his grip landed on the same spot above my elbow, harder this time, and I felt the skin already protesting. Give it to me. No, not this. I pulled back, not even thinking, just reacting. And that's when he yanked me forward so fast my shoulder popped with pain. My stomach turned, my vision blurred, my whole body went cold. He hissed, "You don't get to make me look stupid." I wasn't even a person to him. I was a mirror, an accessory, a reflection he could punish when the world didn't clap. In the valet line, he practically shoved me into the passenger seat of the BMW. He got in, slammed the door, and peeled out of downtown like the city had offended him. The whole ride home, he kept one hand tight on the wheel and the other tapping his phone, probably texting damage control to anyone who might have seen. I stared out the window, heart still hammering, the business card hidden between my palm and my purse like it was a live wire. Grant's voice cut through the silence. "You knew him." I didn't answer fast enough. Grant's head snapped toward me. "You knew him." I forced words out. I didn't know he'd be there." Grant let out this slow, ugly breath. "Who is he to you?" I could have lied. I've lied plenty. I've lied to keep the peace. I've lied to keep myself safe. But my mouth wouldn't move. Because the truth was sitting in my palm, silver and embossed and undeniable. Grant said, "Diane, answer me." My throat burned. "He's from a long time ago." Grant's laugh was humorless. "A long time ago. That's what you're going with." I stared straight ahead. I'm tired. Grant's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "You don't get tired? Not tonight." We pulled into the driveway, and the garage door rattled up like a threat. The house looked the same as it always did. Nice landscaping, clean windows, everything curated to appear stable. Inside, Grant tossed his keys into the bowl by the door like he was throwing a tantrum quietly. He pointed at my hand again. "The card." I swallowed. "It's just—" "Don't insult me," he snapped. "You think I didn't see the way he touched you?" Touched, like holding hands was obscene. Like bruising my arm was normal. Grant stepped closer. He lowered his voice into that dangerous calm that always comes right before he does something he can pretend didn't happen later. He said, "You are not calling him." I felt my pulse in my ears. "Grant, you are not leaving me." He said it like a fact, like gravity, like the law. He reached for my purse. I moved it back instinctively. And that was when his face hardened into something I recognized too well. He said, "Go change. We're not done talking." My arm throbbed. I could already feel the bruise forming under the skin, like my body was preparing its own proof. I walked down the hallway to our bedroom on legs that didn't feel like mine. Grant stayed in the kitchen, and I could hear him making calls, his voice tight, clipped, trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I shut the bedroom door and opened my jewelry box with shaking hands. Under some old costume earrings and a tangle of chains I never wear anymore, there was a small velvet box. I opened it. Green light flashed back at me. An emerald ring. I hadn't put that ring on my finger in 30 years, but I'd never thrown it away. I'd never been able to. Because some things don't die just because you bury them. I set the ring box on the dresser, then I pulled the business card out of my purse. Silver letters, clean edges, heavy paper, Evan's name, Evan's title, a number. My hands were trembling so bad, I had to press the card flat with my palm to steady it. I could hear Grant's footsteps in the hallway now. Slow. Deliberate. Like he was coming to reclaim whatever he thought belonged to him. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Navy dress, pinned hair, older face, eyes that looked like they'd been holding their breath for decades. And I heard myself whisper, so soft, I barely believed it. "I can't do this anymore." Gone. Done. The doorknob turned. Cut to black. Grant came through that bedroom door like he owned the air in it. He didn't even pretend to be calm anymore. He shut the door behind him and stood there in his tux, breathing hard, eyes scanning the dresser like he could smell secrets. "What's in your purse?" he said. I kept my voice level on purpose. My stuff. Cute. He held his hand out. Give it to me. No, not again. I slid the purse strap up my shoulder like I was just adjusting it. My heart was trying to climb out of my chest, but I forced my face into that neutral, blank mask I learned years ago. Grant took a step forward. Diane, don't make me do this the hard way. That sentence is one of those that sounds normal to people who've never lived with it, like he's talking about a chore, like he's talking about a stubborn jar lid. He meant something else. I'm going to change, I said, and I turned toward the closet, like I was obedient, like I wasn't calculating. Grant's eyes narrowed. Change with the door open. Of course. Even privacy was a privilege. So I moved slowly, reached into the closet, and while my body blocked his view, my fingers slid inside the hanging garment bag and tucked Evan's business card into the seam where a loose stitch already was. It wasn't clever. It was desperate. But it was out of my purse. Then I pulled the navy dress off and stepped into an old flannel nightshirt, like this was any normal night. Grant watched me the whole time. His gaze wasn't lust. It wasn't love. It was inventory. When I was done, he pointed at my phone on the nightstand. Unlock it. My throat tightened. Why? Because I said so. I didn't move. Grant reached for it like it was his. He grabbed my iPhone SE and held it up, thumb hovering over the screen. Passcode. I could have handed it over. That's what he expected. That's what I'd done 1,000 times with 1,000 little things. But I was still feeling Evan's hands on mine. Warm, steady, human. And once you feel that again, it's hard to go back to being treated like a lamp. No, I said. It came out quiet, but it was still a no. Grant froze, like his brain had to process the fact that I'd just denied him something. Then his face twisted into that dangerous calm again. He said, "You don't get to tell me no." I shrugged like I didn't care, like my hands weren't shaking. "It's my phone." Grant laughed, and it was mean. "Your phone, with my money." That hit hard, because it was true and he knew it. He wanted me to remember the leash. He tossed the phone onto the bed, like it was trash, and stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you are hiding anything from me, I will make you regret it." A marriage shouldn't sound like a warning. Mine always did. He pivoted and went straight for my purse anyway, digging through it like he was searching a suspect. Tissues, lipstick I barely wear, old receipts, my keys. He held up a crumpled paper and squinted. "What's this?" My stomach dropped. That consignment receipt. $45, printed right there like a joke. "It's the dress," I said. Grant waved it in the air. "You saved the receipt?" It was in the bag. I snapped before I could stop myself. Grant's eyes flashed. "Watch your tone." I clamped my mouth shut so hard my jaw hurt. He tossed the receipt on the dresser like he was disgusted by it, then kept digging, fast and angry. He didn't find the card. But he found something else. He pulled out my locket chain that I'd taken off in the car because the clasp was pinching me. He held it up between his fingers. That locket. I felt my skin go cold. Grant stared at it, then looked at me. "What's in this?" My voice came out tight. "Nothing important." Grant stepped closer and held the locket near his face, studying it like it was evidence. "Open it." I didn't move. He said, "Open it, Diane." I could feel my pulse and my fingertips. I could feel the bruise starting to throb where he'd grabbed me. "I can't," I said, and it was the truth. My fingers wouldn't cooperate even if I wanted them to. Grant's smile was sharp. "You can. You're choosing not to." He reached for it like he was going to force it open himself. And that's when I did something I don't usually do. I stepped forward and grabbed it back. Just snatched it out of his hand. His eyes widened, then narrowed, and I knew right away I'd crossed a line. I heard myself say, "Don't." One syllable. Cold. Final. Grant stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Then he leaned in, so close I could smell the champagne on his breath, and said, "You think that man wants you at your age?" That one landed low, deep, On purpose. He wanted to cut the hope out of me before it grew teeth. He jabbed a finger at my chest. You are mine. And if you try to make me look stupid again, I will burn your life down. That was the moment I stopped seeing this as a bad marriage and started seeing it as something else. A cage. Grant turned and walked out like he'd won, like he'd put me back in my place, and he left the bedroom door open, because of course he did, like a reminder. I stood there shaking, clutching the locket in one hand like a kid clutching a stuffed animal. Then my phone buzzed. I froze, because Grant had tossed it on the bed screen down, and it was still buzzing. I walked over and flipped it carefully, like it might explode. Unknown number. One new message. My hands trembled so badly, I almost dropped the phone again. The text said, "It's Evan. I know this is insane. Please just tell me you're safe." That's all. No flirting, no pressure, just concern. And I did the only smart thing my brain could manage in that second. I took a screenshot. Not because I was thinking like a detective. Because my body knew, deep down, that proof matters. Receipts matter. Then I hid the phone under my pillow like a teenager and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall, listening to Grant's footsteps move through the house. Here's the thing about living with someone like that. You start hearing intention in every sound. A cabinet shuts, you flinch. A floorboard creaks, you stop breathing. I waited until I heard the TV turn on downstairs, some loud sports show he uses as cover, and then I slid out of bed and crept to the closet. I pulled the garment bag down, found that loose seam, and pressed my fingers inside until I felt the thick edge of the business card. There it was. Solid, real. I held it in my palm and just stared at it like I couldn't believe it existed in my house. I took another screenshot, this time a photo of the card with my phone, because if Grant destroyed it, I wanted the number saved somewhere he couldn't erase with one angry grab. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and stupid. I texted Evan back. I wrote, "I'm here. I'm not safe. I can't talk now." I stared at the screen for a long time before I hit send. Then I hit send anyway. My phone immediately buzzed again. "Evan, where are you? I can come get you." My throat closed up. Get me, like it was that simple. I typed, "No, he'll see tomorrow. I'll find a way." I added one more line because it spilled out of me before I could stop it. Please don't do anything that makes him angrier. I hated that I was protecting Grant's temper like it was a wild animal that belonged to both of us. Evan replied, "I won't. I'm staying at the hotel. I'll have my assistant reach out from a work email so it looks normal." Work email. I let out a shaky breath. That was smart. That was stealth. That was someone thinking about my reality, not just his feelings. And right as I was absorbing that, the TV downstairs went quiet. The volume dropped. Grant was moving. I shoved the card back into the garment bag seam, slid my phone into the bedside drawer, and climbed into bed like I'd been there all along. My heart was slamming in my ribs. A second later, Grant appeared in the doorway again. He stared at me for a long beat, eyes sharp, listening, watching. I kept my face blank and my breathing slow. He said, "You're sleeping." Yes, I lied. Grant stepped closer, looked at my nightstand, looked at my pillow like he was scanning for the outline of a phone. Then he smiled, slow and nasty. "Good, because tomorrow we're going to have a conversation with my attorney." My stomach dropped so fast I felt sick. He added, "And you're going to learn how expensive disrespect gets." Then he walked away again, leaving the door open. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing in circles. An attorney. Legal stuff. That's how Grant fights. Not fists. Paper. So yeah, I didn't sleep. Around 5:30 a.m., when the sky outside was still that ugly gray blue, I slid out of bed and went into the bathroom. I locked the door, turned the sink on so the water noise covered me, and pulled my phone out. 2 new messages from Evan overnight. 1, "I meant what I said. I've been looking for you." 2, "I found out something about your husband. We need to talk in person." My hands went cold. Something about Grant. I took screenshots of both immediately. Then I opened my photos and hid them in a folder I labeled coupons because I am apparently living in some spy movie now. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Puffy eyes, pale face, that bruise starting to show on my arm like a fingerprint. I whispered, okay, like I was talking myself off a ledge. Then I did the next smartest thing I could think of. I texted Sharon Pike. Sharon is the only friend I've kept who still knows how to read my silence. We've known each other since church years ago, back when I still showed up places and pretended my life was normal. I wrote, "Are you awake?" She replied almost instantly, "You okay?" That double question mark. Sharon doesn't do that unless she's worried. I typed, "No, I need you today, please." She wrote back, "Where?" I stared at the screen, then typed the truth. "Starbucks near Union Station, 10. She replied, "I'll be there. Do not drive his car." I swallowed hard. Because she knew. She didn't even ask. He'd been controlling me so long that people around us could smell it. I cleared my phone history, tucked it back in my pocket, and walked out of the bathroom like I hadn't just made plans that could blow up my whole life. Downstairs, Grant was already up, dressed for work like nothing happened, like he hadn't threatened me with an attorney in the middle of the night. He looked at me and said, "You look awful." "Thanks," I said flatly. Grant's eyes narrowed, like he didn't like that either. Then he slid a plate across the counter. Toast, eggs, the bare minimum. He said, "We're meeting with my attorney at 3. I took a bite I couldn't taste. "Why?" Grant sipped his coffee like he was discussing the weather. "Because you're gonna sign something." My stomach clenched. "What?" Grant smiled. "An agreement about boundaries." Boundaries? That word coming out of his mouth was a joke. I stared at him. "I'm not signing anything I haven't read." Grant set his mug down a little too hard. "You'll sign what I put in front of you." I met his eyes, and I don't know where the courage came from, but it showed up anyway. I said no. Grant's face went still. Then he leaned back against the counter and said, "You want to play? Fine." He picked up his iPhone 14 Pro, tapped a few times, and without looking up said, "Check your account." My throat tightened. "What account?" Grant's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your little allowance account." I walked to the kitchen island where my phone was charging and unplugged it with shaking hands. I opened my banking app, except I didn't have access to the main Chase login, so I opened the little side account that still had my name on it. Balance, $12.48. I stared at it, blinking, like the numbers might change if I blinked enough. "What did you do?" I whispered. Grant shrugged. "You spent money on a dress. You bought yourself a little fantasy night. Now you're on a budget." My voice cracked. "That was $45. Grant smiled. "And your disrespect is priceless." I couldn't breathe right. That wasn't just control. That was punishment. That was him training me like a dog. I stared at the screen, then slowly looked up at him. Grant said, soft as silk, "Now, 3 o'clock, don't be late." I walked out of the kitchen before I said something that would get me hurt. Upstairs, I put on jeans and a sweater, covered the bruise with makeup as best I could, and tried to think. Starbucks at 10, Sharon at 10, Evan at some point today, and Grant's attorney at 3. I was running out of road. At 9:40, I told Grant I needed to run to Target for shampoo. He didn't even look up from his phone when he said, "Take the Camry." Like he was generous. Like it wasn't the only car I could drive without him tracking the BMW's onboard system. I grabbed my keys and walked out, trying to keep my movements normal. In the driveway, I paused, looked around, and then I saw it. A tiny black square stuck near the bottom of my windshield on the inside, tucked behind the inspection sticker. My stomach flipped. A tracker, or at least something that looked like it. I leaned closer, heart pounding. I couldn't tell what it was for sure, but I knew one thing. Grant was not accidentally placing electronics in my car. My hands shook. I didn't rip it out. I didn't have time to be loud about it. Instead, I did what women my age do when we've been underestimated too long. I took a picture of it. Another receipt. Then I drove anyway, keeping my face calm even though my whole body wanted to scream. At Starbucks near Union Station, I parked in a spot that gave me a full view of the door. I sat in my car for a minute, hands on the wheel, breathing like I was about to run a marathon. Then Sharon pulled in. She got out of her SUV and walked toward me like she was marching into a fight. Sharon's in her 50s, blonde hair always in a ponytail, always wearing sneakers, like she might have to move fast. She opened my passenger door and slid in, eyes scanning my face. "Show me," she said. I blinked. "Show you what?" Sharon pointed at my arm. "That." I swallowed and pulled my sweater sleeve up just enough. That bruise had fully shown up now, purple-green, angry, shaped like fingers. Sharon's mouth tightened. "Oh, Diane." I tried to laugh it off like I always do. "It's not." Sharon cut me off. "Stop. Don't do that." I sat there, staring straight ahead, and felt my eyes sting. Sharon said, "Did he do that last night?" I nodded once. Sharon exhaled like she was counting to 10. Then she said, very quietly, "You need out." My throat tightened. "I know." Sharon looked at me. "What changed?" I hesitated. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot of Evan's text. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until Sharon reached over and steadied my wrist. Sharon read it, eyes flicking fast. Then she looked up at me and said, "Evan Blackwell, that Evan." I swallowed. "Yes." Sharon sat back, processing. Okay, that's big." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Grant thinks I'm going to sign something at 3. Sharon's eyes sharpened. "A postnup? A separation agreement? Something worse?" "I don't know," I said, and my voice wobbled. "He drained my account this morning." Sharon stared at me. "He did what?" I pulled up my balance and showed her. Sharon's face changed. That's the thing. People can ignore emotional abuse if it's packaged nicely, but money? Numbers? That hits different. Sharon said, "That's financial abuse." I flinched at the word, because hearing it named made it real. Sharon leaned in. "Do you have any access to the joint Chase account at all?" I shook my head. "He has the login. Always has." Sharon's jaw clenched. "We're going to fix that." "We?" I whispered. Sharon looked at me like I was being ridiculous. "Yes, we. You're not doing this alone." That almost broke me right there. Then Sharon said, "So what's the plan with Evan?" I stared at my lap. "He wants to meet. He said he found out something about Grant." Sharon's eyebrows lifted. "That's not what I expected." "Me either," I admitted. Sharon took my phone gently. "Show me those messages again." I did. Sharon nodded slowly. "Okay. First thing, you keep every screenshot. Second thing, you do not let Grant get your phone again. Third thing." Her eyes flicked toward the windshield and she paused. "Why are you parked like you're watching the door?" I swallowed. "Because I think he's tracking me." Sharon's face hardened. "What?" I showed her the photo I took of the little black square on my windshield. Sharon leaned closer to my screen. "Oh my God." I whispered, "I knew it." Sharon looked at me and said, "He's not just controlling, he's planning." That sentence landed like a weight. "He's planning." Sharon grabbed my hand. "Listen to me. You go meet Evan, but you do it smart. You do it in public. You do it where there are cameras. And you do not go back home and pretend nothing happened." My mouth went dry. "What do I do about 3 o'clock?" Sharon's gaze didn't soften. "You don't sign a thing, and if he tries, you walk out." I shook my head fast. "He'll—" Sharon cut in. "Let him throw a tantrum. Let him threaten. Threats are air until they're paper, and if he puts it on paper, that becomes your evidence." Evidence. Receipts. Proof. My life was turning into a file folder. Sharon tapped my phone. "Text Evan. Tell him where. Tell him you have a hard stop." I nodded, swallowed, and typed with shaky fingers. "Can you meet at the hotel lobby cafe at noon? Public. I have to be somewhere at 3. Evan replied within a minute. Yes, I'll have Tessa email you an invite so it looks like business. My phone buzzed again almost immediately, this time an email notification. From Tessa Nguyen. Subject, Blackwell Industries. Brief meeting. I stared at it like it was glowing. Sharon leaned in. Open it. I opened it, and there it was. Polite, professional language, the hotel address, a time. Nothing romantic. Nothing that looked like a secret affair. Sharon said, forward that to me. I blinked. Why? So if he smashes your phone, I still have it. That made my throat tighten again. I forwarded it. Receipt number. I'd lost count. Sharon reached into her purse and handed me a small portable charger. Keep your phone alive. Then she said, very softly, and if he puts hands on you again, you call 911. I don't care if you feel embarrassed. You call. I nodded, even though my pride hated it, even though my fear hated it more. Before we got out of the car, Sharon grabbed my wrist again. Look at me. I looked at her. She said, a leash isn't love. Then she added, and you're not too old to be wanted. That was cruelty. Don't let him tattoo it on your brain. I blinked fast so I wouldn't cry in the Starbucks parking lot like a cliché. At noon, I walked into the hotel lobby with my shoulders back like I belonged there, like I wasn't seconds away from unraveling. The lobby cafe was bright and busy. Business travelers, laptops open, people talking quietly, cameras in corners, staff moving around. Safe enough. Evan was already there at a table near the window, no suit jacket this time, sleeves rolled up, coffee untouched. When he saw me, he stood immediately. Not dramatic, just respectful. He didn't reach for my hands this time, he just looked at me like he was trying to memorize me all over again. He said hi. My voice came out rough. Hi. I sat down, and for a second, we just stared at each other like two people standing on opposite sides of a river. Then Evan's gaze dropped to my arm. I'd covered the bruise with makeup and a sweater sleeve, but the edge of it still showed when I moved. Evan's jaw tightened. Did he hurt you? I hesitated, then nodded once. Evan's eyes went dark. He leaned forward. Diane, why are you still there? I let out a shaky laugh that wasn't funny. Because it's complicated. Evan nodded slowly. No, it's controlled. That word again. Controlled. I swallowed hard. He's taking me to his attorney at 3. Evan's eyebrows lifted. For what? I don't know. He said I'm signing something. Evan's expression sharpened. Do not sign anything. I stared at him. That's what Sharon said. Evan's mouth tightened. Good. Sharon sounds smart. I didn't even have the energy to wonder how weird it was that both of these people were now talking about my life like it was a crisis plan. Evan reached into his bag and slid a thin folder across the table, careful and controlled. He said, I need you to see something. My fingers hovered over it, then I opened it. Inside was a printed email. Not from Evan to me. From Grant Whitaker to a private investigator. My breath caught. Evan said quietly, I hired a firm years ago to find you. They contacted people from your past. They followed leads. And 3 times, they got shut down. I stared at the paper, eyes scanning. Grant's name, Grant's email. A short message that made my stomach flip. Something about cease contact, harassment, legal action if you continue. I looked up at Evan, voice shaking. This is real? Evan nodded. It's archived, time-stamped. We verified the headers. My skin went cold. Grant had blocked Evan from finding me. Grant had found a way to keep me invisible on purpose. I couldn't breathe right. How long? Evan's voice went softer. At least a decade, maybe longer. This is the earliest one we recovered. There may be others. I stared down at Grant's name on that page like it was a stranger. Then another thought hit me, sharp and sick. If he did this, I whispered, then he knew who you were. Evan didn't look away. Yes. My mouth went dry. He knew last night. Evan nodded once. He recognized me. He tried to shake my hand like he could own the moment. He was terrified when I walked past him. I felt dizzy. My husband didn't just randomly lose his mind at the gala. He lost control of a plan he'd been maintaining for years. And that meant whatever was under that plan was bigger than I'd wanted to believe. Evan leaned in. "Diane, there's more." Of course there was. He slid another page out of the folder. A Chase transfer printout. I stared at it, confused at first, until I saw the numbers. A transfer from the joint account, your joint account, into an account I didn't recognize. Not 200, not 500. Thousands. Evan said, "I can't access your bank, but when my counsel started looking at Grant's legal threats, they pulled public records tied to his name. There's a pattern of financial movement connected to business filings." My hands shook as I stared at the page. "How did you get this?" Evan's voice stayed calm. "It's attached to a civil filing from 3 years ago. Grant was involved in a dispute with a contractor. This transfer was part of the exhibits." My throat tightened. "So he's been moving money." Evan nodded. "I don't know where it's going, but I know he's doing it quietly." I felt sick. Grant draining my allowance account this morning wasn't just punishment. It was practice. It was him reminding me he could turn my life off with one tap. I swallowed hard. He told me he's taking me to an attorney at 3. Evan's eyes locked on mine. "That's not about boundaries. That's about trapping you on paper." I stared at the table, trying not to shake apart. Evan said, "I'm not going to pressure you into anything, but I need you to understand something." I looked up. Evan's voice dropped, softer. "I never stopped looking. I never stopped wondering what happened. And last night, when I saw you, I knew you'd been surviving something." I felt tears sting and I hated it. I whispered, "I kept the ring." Evan blinked. "What?" I nodded, barely. "I kept it. I didn't wear it. I just couldn't throw it away." Evan's throat worked like he was swallowing something painful. "Diane." I shook my head quickly. Don't make this about romance right now. I can't handle that." Evan nodded immediately. "Okay, fair." Then he leaned forward again, eyes serious. "So let's make it about safety. What do you need in the next 3 hours?" I stared at him, because nobody had asked me that in years. Not like that. I whispered, "I need to not sign anything." Evan nodded. "Done." "And I need to know what he's hiding," I said, voice shaking. "Because now I know he's hiding something." Evan's eyes didn't soften. "We'll find it." That confidence almost made me angry, like must be nice to say "we'll find it" from a place of power. But it also made me feel less alone. Evan slid a business card across the table again, but this one was different. Plain white handwritten number on the back. He said, "This is my personal line. Memorize it. And this," he tapped the other email printout, "you keep. If he forces you into that attorney's office, you do not go in without a copy of whatever they put in front of you." I nodded, throat tight. "He'll be furious." Evan's gaze was steady. "Let him be furious in front of witnesses." I stood up slowly, folding the papers back into the folder with shaky hands. Evan said, "I can have security escort you." "No," I cut in too fast. "That'll set him off." Evan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Okay, but text me when you're out." I nodded, then hesitated, and said the thing that had been scratching at me since last night. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why did you show up now?" Evan's face shifted. He looked down at his coffee, then back up. He said, "My father died 6 months ago. Richard Blackwell." The name hit me like a cold hand on my spine. Evan continued, voice tight. "And in his things, I found a file about you." My skin went icy. Evan said he kept details, he kept notes, he kept his version of what happened. I couldn't speak. Evan leaned forward, eyes intent, and when I saw that file, I realized the reason I never found you wasn't bad luck. He paused, then said it plain. It was interference. My stomach dropped. Interference from Richard, interference from Grant. A web. Evan said, "We'll talk about that file when you're ready." But right now, you have an attorney at 3 and a husband who thinks he owns your signature. I nodded slowly, folder clutched to my chest like armor. Okay. I walked out of that hotel lobby, feeling like my feet didn't belong to me. In the Camry, I sat for a second and took photos of the papers again. Quick shots, just in case. Then I texted Sharon. He has proof. Grant blocked him. And money transfers. Sharon replied immediately, "Do not go alone to that attorney." I stared at the screen, because I didn't know how to avoid it without triggering something worse. At 2:35, I pulled into our driveway and saw Grant's BMW already there. He was home early. My stomach flipped. I walked inside and found him in the living room, jacket off, sleeves rolled, pacing like a man waiting to strike. He turned when he saw me and smiled. Not a warm smile. "I already know" smile. He said, "Where were you?" I forced my voice steady. "Target, Starbucks." Grant held up his phone. On his screen was my location history, my car's route, every stop, every minute. He said, "You forgot what you drive." My skin went cold. Then he tossed something onto the coffee table. A printed email. Tessa Neiman's email. The subject line stared up at me like a flare. Blackwell Industries. Brief meeting. Grant looked at me and said, very softly, "You think you're sneaky." My throat closed. He took one slow step toward me, eyes dead calm. Then he said, "Get your coat. We're going to my attorney right now." He leaned in just enough for me to feel his breath, and his voice dropped into a whisper that made my whole body tense. "And after that, I'm calling Evan Blackwell myself." He smiled again, sharp and satisfied. "Let's see how much he likes you when he understands what you really are." I stood there frozen, because I didn't even know what that last line meant yet. And that's what scared me the most. You can handle anger, you can handle insults, you can even handle threats when you know what they're about. But when someone promises to expose something you didn't know existed, that's when you realize you've been living inside somebody else's story. Grant didn't give me time to think. He stood there in our living room with that printed email on the table like a trophy, and he watched my face the way you watch a safe you're trying to crack. I kept my hands still at my sides like my body wasn't buzzing. "Go," he said again, nodding toward the entryway. "Coat, keys." I walked to the closet like I was obedient, because if I moved too fast, he'd know I was afraid, and if he knew I was afraid, he'd enjoy it. My fingers closed around my coat hanger and I made myself breathe through my nose. Slow, quiet. Grant's voice floated behind me. "And don't even think about texting anybody." I didn't answer. Silence is safer than arguing when the other person is looking for an excuse. I slipped my coat on, grabbed my purse, and stepped toward the door. Grant moved first. He scooped my keys out of the bowl by the door, jingled them once, and said, "I'm driving." Of course he was. He wanted me trapped in the passenger seat, where he could watch my hands and decide when I was allowed to speak. I followed him out to the driveway, and I saw it right away. My Camry backed in tight behind his BMW, like he'd blocked it on purpose. That wasn't an accident. Grant opened the BMW's passenger door for me with a tight smile that said, "Look how civilized I am," and I slid into the seat. The second my seatbelt clicked, I knew I'd just locked myself into whatever this was. Grant pulled out of the driveway and didn't turn on the radio. He wanted the silence. He wanted it heavy. He said, "You met him." I stared straight ahead. "You already know the answer." Grant's jaw twitched. "You think you're going to play dumb and I'm going to let you." I kept my voice even. It was a public lobby. If you've got questions, ask them. He laughed, low. "You got bold overnight." He merged onto the highway and tapped his iPhone against the steering wheel like he was counting down. Then he said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign what my attorney puts in front of you, and you're going to stop this little fantasy before it grows legs." Fantasy. That word did something to me. Because my fantasy was being allowed to breathe. My fantasy was not getting my money drained as punishment. My fantasy was not flinching at footsteps. I swallowed and said the one sentence Sharon drilled into me in that parking lot. I'm not signing anything without my own lawyer. Grant's eyes flicked to me, sharp. Oh, Sharon got to you. I didn't react. Inside, my stomach dropped. Mini twist. He knew about Sharon. Grant continued, voice calm like he was talking about taxes. I saw your little Starbucks stop. And if you think I don't know who you talk to, you've been underestimating me. My palms went cold. So that little black square on my windshield wasn't just something that looked like a tracker. It was a leash with a map. Grant said, you want to be stubborn? Fine, but there are consequences. There it was again, that word he loves. Consequences. I stared out the window at Denver traffic and said quietly, you mean punishments. Grant smiled without humor. Call it whatever makes you feel better. Here's a cold truth I learned the hard way. A man who controls money isn't afraid of feelings. He's afraid of receipts. And I had receipts. My phone was in my purse. My screenshots were tucked in that little coupons folder. My photos of the tracker and the email were already forwarded to Sharon. Even if he took my phone, the proof lived somewhere else now. That thought steadied me for about half a second. Then Grant made another turn of the knife. He said, you know why Evan Blackwell is interested? I didn't answer because my voice would have cracked. Grant glanced at me and went softer, like he was being kind. He doesn't want you. He wants a story. He wants to feel like a hero. I kept my face blank. Grant continued, and when he finds out what's in that file my attorney has, he's going to back away real quick. File. So there really was a file. My throat tightened. What file? Grant laughed. Oh, now you're curious. He drove a few more minutes in silence, then said, you think you're the only one with a past. My heart thumped hard. I didn't know what he meant, and that was the point. He wanted my imagination to do the damage before he even showed me anything. He pulled into a small office building in a strip of professional suites. Dentist, chiropractor, tax prep, nothing fancy. Beige walls, cheap landscaping. The kind of place where the parking lot feels like a trap because there's nowhere to hide. Grant parked, killed the engine, and looked at me. You behave in there, he said, like I was 12. I opened my purse slowly, pretending to look for lipstick, and my fingers found my phone. I hit the side button twice, just enough to bring up the screen, and I took a quick photo of the building directory sign through the windshield. Attorney name, suite number, address. Receipt. Then I tucked the phone back into my purse and followed him inside. The suite smelled like stale coffee and toner. A receptionist behind a glass window glanced up and smiled too brightly. Grant said, "We're here." She checked her screen, then looked at me like I was a package being delivered. Right this way. We sat in a small conference room with a fake plant and framed photos of downtown Denver that looked like they'd been printed at Walgreens. Grant sat at the head of the table. He wanted the power position. I sat across from him, hands folded, shoulders tight. The attorney walked in a minute later, mid-40s, neat hair, expensive pen clipped to his pocket like it was part of his personality. He shook Grant's hand like they were old friends, then nodded at me like I was an afterthought. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said, "thanks for coming." He placed a stack of papers in front of me. Grant said, "Let's get this done." The attorney slid a single page on top of the stack and pointed. "This is a marital agreement. It outlines financial boundaries and communication boundaries." I stared at the title. Post-marital agreement and confidentiality addendum. My stomach dropped. Confidentiality addendum. That's a gag order with a nicer name. I looked up. "Why is there confidentiality?" Grant leaned back, relaxed. "Because you're not going to run around telling people lies." The attorney nodded like that was reasonable. I felt my skin go hot. "I haven't told anyone anything." Grant's smile was thin, yet. The attorney said it's standard when there are reputational concerns. Reputational concerns. Like I was the risk. I slid the top page slightly away from me. "I need a copy to review with my own counsel." Grant's eyes flashed. No. I kept my voice steady. Yes. The attorney tried to smooth it over. We can provide a copy after signature. I stared at him. Then I'm not signing. Grant's chair scraped as he leaned forward. Diane, don't do this. I looked at the attorney and said, clear as day, I'm requesting a copy before signing. That's normal. The attorney's smile tightened. Mrs. Whitaker, if your husband is asking you to sign. I cut in, still calm. I'm not signing anything without a copy, period. Grant's face changed. He went still. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out his own paper, already printed, already prepared. He slid it across the table toward the attorney like he was handing over a weapon. The attorney glanced at it, then looked at me. This is a petition for separation, the attorney said, and his voice turned formal. If you refuse reasonable terms today, Mr. Whitaker will be filing immediately. Grant watched me like he was waiting for me to collapse. I didn't. I stared at that separation petition and felt something inside me go cold and sharp. He'd already written the ending. He was just deciding whether I'd sign it nicely or get dragged. I leaned back in my chair and said quietly, you can file whatever you want. I still won't sign blind. Grant's mouth tightened. You're making a mistake. I looked at him. You've been making mistakes for years. The attorney cleared his throat, uncomfortable now. The room shifted, a tiny crack in Grant's control. Grant turned to the attorney. Show her. The attorney opened a folder, Grant's file, and pulled out a page with my name typed at the top. I braced myself. But it wasn't what I expected. It was a copy of a marriage license application from decades ago, not mine with Grant. Mine with someone else, with Evan Blackwell's name on it. My breath caught. My hands went numb. The attorney said, this appears to indicate you were previously engaged to Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Whitaker is concerned about rekindling. Grant leaned in, voice low and cruel. Tell them how you ran. Tell them how you disappeared. I couldn't speak. Because he'd just confirmed something Evan hinted at. Grant knew. He'd known who Evan was to me. He'd known enough to dig up paperwork from a lifetime ago. And he'd saved it. Like ammo. Grant said, now here's what you're going to do. You're going to sign the confidentiality addendum and the non-disparagement clause. You're going to stop contacting him, and you're going to stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Same man, same language, different room. I looked down at the paper again, then up at the attorney. I want a copy, I said. Right now. The attorney hesitated, eyes flicking to Grant. And I understood. The attorney worked for Grant, not for me. This was never neutral ground. I took out my phone from my purse slowly and placed it on the table, screen up. My hand shook, but my voice didn't. I'm going to take photos of every page, I said. Grant's head snapped. No, you're not. I tapped the screen and raised the phone anyway. Then give me a copy. The attorney shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. Grant's face went tight. Put it down. I met his eyes and said the simplest thing in the world. Make me. That sentence tasted like gasoline. Grant's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. But he didn't grab me, not in front of witnesses, not in a lawyer's office. So he did the next best thing. He stood up, took a slow breath, and said to the attorney, "We're done here." Then he looked at me and smiled like a man who already had another plan. He said, "Fine, no signature, but you're going to learn what that costs." He walked out, expecting me to follow. The attorney cleared his throat and said, "Mrs. Whitaker, I would advise you." I stood, heart pounding, and snapped photos of the top page anyway. Title, date, Grant's name, attorney letterhead, receipt. Then I walked out of that office with my shoulders back, even though my legs felt like rubber. Grant was already in the car, engine running. The second I sat down, he took off like he was fleeing a crime scene. He didn't speak for a full 5 minutes, just gripped the steering wheel and stared ahead like he was holding himself together by force. Then he said, "You embarrassed me." I stared out the window. "You tried to trap me." Grant's voice turned sweet again, which is always worse. "You think Evan's your lifeboat?" I didn't answer. Grant continued, "He's not. He's a headline. And you're the kind of mess people love to read about." My throat tightened. "What are you talking about?" Grant's smile twitched. "Oh, you'll see." We got home and he walked in first, shoulders squared, like he'd just returned from battle. I followed, and the first thing I noticed was the living room. My purse, my actual purse, was sitting open on the coffee table, the zipper pulled wide, my makeup bag dumped out, my keys separated. He'd already searched it while I was trapped in that attorney's office. He wasn't just angry, he was thorough. My stomach dropped. I walked straight to the bedroom and opened my nightstand drawer. My phone charger was gone. Not the portable charger Sharon gave me. I had that in my coat pocket, but my regular cord. Petty, but strategic. He wanted my battery dead. I glanced at my closet. The garment bag was hanging exactly where I left it. Too exactly. My skin prickled. I stepped closer and ran my fingers along the seam where I'd hidden Evan's business card. Empty. My chest tightened. He'd found it. I stood there frozen, staring at the stupid garment bag, like it had betrayed me. Then I heard Grant's voice from downstairs. Casual, loud enough for me to hear. "I've got it," he said, like he was talking to someone on the phone. "Yes, Evan Blackwell, put me through." My heart slammed. He wasn't bluffing. I grabbed my phone from my purse and saw my battery, 28%. Not great. I sprinted to the bathroom, locked the door, and texted Evan with shaking fingers. He found the card. "He's calling you right now." Evan replied almost instantly. "I won't take his call. Are you safe?" I typed, "Not really." Then I texted Sharon, "He found the business card. He's calling Evan. He's searching my stuff." Sharon, "Get out of that house now." I stared at that text like it was a cliff. Because leaving isn't just leaving. Leaving is escalation. Leaving is the moment a controlling person realizes the leash is slipping. And Grant had already taken me to an attorney. He'd already drained my money. He'd already tracked my car. So yeah, I was terrified. But I was also done. I took another photo of my closet seam. Empty, obvious, because I wanted proof the card was there, and now it wasn't. That sounds silly until you've lived with someone who gaslights. He'd swear I lost it. He'd swear I imagined it. Pictures shut that down. Receipt. Then I stuffed my phone in my coat pocket, took Sharon's portable charger, and walked out of the bathroom. I didn't go downstairs. I went to the guest room. Because Grant almost never goes in there. It's where we keep extra linens and Christmas wrapping paper. It's where life goes to be forgotten. I shut the door and opened the closet. Behind a stack of old blankets, I found a shoebox. Inside were the things I'd hidden over the years. My own birth certificate, my passport, a copy of our mortgage papers I'd printed once and never had the courage to use, and a little envelope with $320 in cash. I'd saved $20 at a time like a squirrel. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I shoved the shoebox into a tote bag, hands shaking. Then I heard the front door open and close. A car door slam. Grant leaving. For a split second, relief flooded me. Then the relief curdled, because if he was leaving, it meant he was going to do something without me watching. I moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. Grant's BMW backed out and disappeared down the street. I stood there, breathing hard, tote bag in my hand, trying to decide whether to run or hide. And then my phone buzzed again. It was an email notification. From Chase. Subject, account update, new device signed in. My blood went cold. He was changing access. He was locking me out of whatever tiny window I still had. I opened the email with shaking fingers. It wasn't a full login because I didn't have the joint account access, but it was connected to my little side account, the one he drained. It showed a new device linked, a new security update. Grant was making sure I couldn't even see the crumbs. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. I took a screenshot immediately. Receipt. Then I forced myself to move. I grabbed my tote bag, slid quietly down the hallway, and went straight to the garage. My Camry was still blocked in by his BMW being gone, except now it wasn't blocked. The driveway was open. The universe was giving me a door. I didn't take time to overthink it. I climbed into the Camry, started the engine, and pulled out as quietly as I could. Halfway down the street, my phone buzzed again. Another email. From Grant. Subject, "You're making this worse." My stomach dropped. He'd emailed me, not texted, because emails look cleaner. Emails look like documentation. I didn't open it yet. I just took a screenshot of the subject line in my notification banner. Receipt. I drove toward the nearest Chase branch I knew, one off a main road, plenty of traffic, plenty of cameras. I parked and sat there for one long second, hands gripping the steering wheel. Then I walked inside with my tote bag like I was a normal woman running errands. The bank smelled like carpet cleaner and anxiety, a line of people waiting, a security guard near the door, tellers behind glass. I stepped up when it was my turn and said, "I need to speak to someone about my accounts." The banker, young guy, nice haircut, smiled automatically. "Sure, can I see your ID?" My hands shook as I handed it over. He typed, then frowned slightly. "Okay, I see a joint checking at Chase and a secondary account." I nodded. "My husband controls the login. I need my own access, today." He hesitated. "For the joint account, both parties usually." "I know," I said quickly. "I'm not asking to change that today. I'm asking to open a new account in my name only. And I want a new debit card issued here." His eyes flicked up. He was reading me now, not just the screen. "Of course," he said, voice softer. "We can do that." I breathed out, shaky. Mini twist. I could still do something. I could still create a pocket he couldn't reach, at least not instantly. He walked me to a desk and started paperwork. I signed forms with a pen that felt too light. I answered questions. I kept my answers short. He printed a page and slid it to me. New account number, new debit card order, terms. I stared at the paper like it was a life raft. Then my phone buzzed. A call. Grant. My throat tightened. I declined it. The banker glanced up, polite. "Everything okay?" I nodded, even though it wasn't. The banker said, "We can set up online access for your new account right now." "Yes," I said. "Please." He helped me set a new password. A new security question. He handed me a printed receipt for my account opening and the temporary debit card. I folded that paper carefully and slid it into my tote bag like it was gold. Because it was. When I walked out of that bank, I did not feel free. I felt hunted. I sat in my car and finally opened Grant's email. It was short. "I know where you went. Turn around. We can fix this. If you keep pushing, you will lose everything." I stared at the words until they blurred. He knew where I went. So the tracker, or whatever he had, was still giving him my location. Or he had access to my phone through something I didn't understand. Or he was watching my bank alerts. Either way, he wasn't guessing. Sharon called me. I answered with shaking fingers. She didn't waste time. "Where are you?" "At Chase." "Good," she said. "Stay in public. Do not go home." My voice cracked. "He knows where I am." Sharon's voice went harder. "Then let him know you're not alone. Drive to my place. Park in my driveway. If he shows up, we call 911. I swallowed. "He'll make a scene." Sharon said, "Let him." That was another cold truth. Sometimes the scene is the protection. I texted Evan too, fast. "Grant is tracking me. I opened a new account. He's escalating." Evan replied, "Go to Sharon. I am sending my security team's number through Tessa. Save it." A second later, Tessa emailed, "For your safety, contact number attached." I opened it and saw a phone number in plain text. I screenshotted it and saved it under a boring contact name, dentist office. Because at this point, I trusted boredom more than honesty. Receipt. I drove to Sharon's house, with my eyes checking mirrors every few seconds. When I pulled into her driveway, Sharon was already outside, arms crossed, like she'd been waiting for a storm. I got out of the car and she hugged me so tight I almost collapsed. Then she pulled back, looked at my face, and said, "Okay, what's the plan?" I stared at her, and the truth came out raw. "I don't have a plan," I whispered. "I have a tote bag and a new debit card." Sharon's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "That's a start." She guided me inside and sat me at her kitchen table like I was a kid who just ran home crying. "Phone," she said. "Show me everything." I pulled up my screenshots, Evan's texts, Tessa's email, the attorney document title page, the tracker photo, the Chase new device alert, Grant's email threat. Sharon's jaw clenched harder with each one. "This man is building a case," she said finally. I swallowed. "For what?" Sharon's voice turned flat. "For control, for leverage, for court, for whatever keeps you quiet." I stared down at my hands. "He said he's going to tell Evan what I really am." Sharon's eyes narrowed. "What does that even mean?" "I don't know," I admitted, and my voice shook. "But Evan said Richard had a file on me, and Grant has a file, and suddenly I feel like everybody knows something about my life except me." Sharon leaned forward. "Then we find out." There it was. Planning, not panic. Planning. Sharon grabbed her laptop and opened a document like she was starting a grocery list. "Okay," she said. "Step 1, you stay here tonight." My throat tightened. "He'll come here." Sharon's eyes didn't blink. "Let him try." She typed. "Step 2, tomorrow we call a family law attorney that works with domestic abuse cases. You don't need bruises the size of Texas for this to count." I swallowed hard. Sharon kept typing. "Step 3, you get a new phone number. Or at least, you stop using the number he knows for anything private." I hesitated. "He'll see the bill." Sharon looked at me. "Then we do prepaid for now." Prepaid. Simple. Dirty little workaround. Sharon added, "Step 4, you stop driving that car until we figure out the tracking." My stomach sank. "Then how do I get anywhere?" Sharon pointed at her keys on the counter. "You take mine." I stared at her. "Sharon, I can't." She cut me off. "Yes, you can, and you will." She leaned back and said, "Now, tell me exactly what happened at that attorney's office." So I did. I told her about the confidentiality addendum, the separation petition, the old marriage license application with Evan's name, the way the attorney looked at Grant for permission like Grant was the real judge in the room. Sharon listened, jaw tight. Then she said, "That marriage license paper is a threat." I nodded. "He wants to paint me as unfaithful, unstable, something." Sharon's eyes narrowed. "Or he wants to shame you into silence." I stared at the table. Sharon's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face changed. "Grant's calling me," she said. My stomach dropped. Sharon didn't answer right away. She looked at me. "What do you want me to do?" I whispered, "Don't let him charm you." Sharon snorted. "Honey, I'm 56. I'm allergic to charm." She hit speaker. Grant's voice came through, smooth as butter. "Sharon, I hope I'm not interrupting." Sharon's tone was ice. "You are." Grant chuckled like she was being funny. "Listen, I'm trying to handle a private matter. Diane is confused right now. She's overreacting. I need you to send her home." My hands curled into fists under the table. Sharon said, "She's not a dog. You don't send her." Grant's voice hardened a notch. "She's my wife." Sharon replied, "She's a grown woman." Grant exhaled, like he was the patient one. "Okay, fine, put her on." Sharon looked at me. My mouth went dry, my heart pounded. I shook my head. Sharon said, "No." Grant's voice snapped. "Excuse me?" Sharon didn't flinch. "She's not talking to you right now, and if you show up at my house, I'm calling 911. There was a pause. Then Grant laughed. Not happy, not light. "Do you know what she's hiding?" he asked. Sharon's eyes flicked to me quick. Sharon said, "I know what you're doing. You're trying to scare her back into your house." Grant's voice went lower. "I'm trying to protect Evan Blackwell from a mistake." My stomach turned. Grant continued, "Ask her about Richard Blackwell's file. Ask her what she did. Ask her what she took." My breath caught. Sharon's face went still. "What she took?" Grant said, "That's right. Diane's not some innocent little victim. She's got history, and I've got paperwork." Paperwork. Always paperwork. Sharon's voice stayed steady, but I could hear the anger under it. "If you have evidence of a crime, Grant, call the police." Grant chuckled again. "Oh, I will. Don't worry." Then he hung up. The kitchen went quiet, except for Sharon's refrigerator humming. I stared at her, throat tight. Sharon said slowly, "Okay, that's new." "What is?" I whispered. Sharon looked me dead in the eye. "He just threatened to involve police." My skin went cold. Because if Grant made a false report, if he painted me as unstable or criminal, he could do real damage. He could get me dragged back into his control through fear. And he kept saying Richard Blackwell's file like it was a weapon. Evan's name popped up on my phone a second later. Text, not call. "Did he contact you?" I typed back, "He's threatening to call police. He says Richard had a file about me. He says I took something." Evan replied almost instantly, "You didn't take anything. He's twisting it. Stay with Sharon. I'm getting my counsel involved." My hands shook as I stared at the message. Mini twist. Evan knew what Grant meant. Evan wasn't confused by took something. That meant there was a real story there. And I still didn't know it. Sharon reached across the table and took my hand, squeezing hard. "Listen," she said, "tonight you don't sleep alone, you don't walk outside alone, and you keep your phone on." I nodded, throat tight. Sharon stood up and went to her pantry, pulled out a plain notebook and a pen, and set them in front of me. "Write down every date you remember," she said. "Every threat, every time he touched you, every money thing. The court likes timelines." Timeline. My life turned into bullet points. I opened my mouth to argue, but I didn't. I started writing. January 2026, gala. Attorney office, confidentiality, addendum. Chase account drained, $12.48 left. Tracker photo, windshield. Email threat, lose everything. The more I wrote, the more real it got. And the more real it got, the more furious I felt. Not loud furious. Clean furious. The kind that doesn't cry. The kind that collects proof. That night, Sharon set up the guest room for me and insisted I keep the lights on in the hallway. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, phone plugged into the portable charger, my tote bag on the floor like a go bag. Around 1:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. An email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject, Incident Report, Denver PD. My blood went ice cold. I opened it with shaking fingers. It wasn't a full report, not yet. It was a notification, an automated portal message saying a report had been submitted online and would be reviewed. Submitted by Grant Whitaker. Against Diane Whitaker. Allegation category, theft/fraud. I couldn't breathe. I took a screenshot so fast my fingers fumbled. Receipt. Then I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Because whatever Richard Blackwell's file was, Grant was using it now. He wasn't just threatening, he'd already pulled the trigger. I sat up in bed, heart slamming, and whispered into the dark, "Oh my God." Sharon knocked softly and opened the door a crack, like she'd heard me. "What?" she whispered. I held up my phone with trembling hands. Sharon stepped in, read the screen, and her face went hard. "He filed on you," she said, voice flat. I swallowed. "He's trying to make me the criminal." Sharon nodded once. "Yes, and now we don't wait until morning." She grabbed her own phone and started dialing. "Who are you calling?" I whispered. Sharon looked at me, eyes sharp, and said, "A lawyer, and if we can't get one at 1 in the morning, we call the non-emergency line and we get ahead of it." My throat tightened. "They'll come here." Sharon's voice didn't shake. "Good, let them." Then she looked at me, and her tone softened just a hair. "Diane," she said, "whatever is in Richard's file, we're going to see it. Evan's going to show it, and then we're going to burn Grant's story down with the truth." I stared at my phone, the words theft/fraud glowing like a threat. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, normal. Inside, my life was splitting open. And the worst part? Grant still hadn't told me what he was accusing me of. So I lay there, shaking, waiting for the next ping. Because I knew it was coming. And when it did, I was going to find out what Richard Blackwell wrote about me and why Grant thought it could destroy me. Sharon didn't even put her shoes on before she was pacing her kitchen in socks, phone pressed to her ear, voice clipped and steady like she'd done this 100 times. I sat at her table with my hands wrapped around a mug of water I couldn't drink, staring at that portal notification on my screen like it might change if I stared hard enough. Sharon said into the phone, "Yes, it's after midnight. No, it can't wait until morning. Yes, there's a report filed. Allegations of theft and fraud. And the person being accused is in my home, safe, and we're asking what steps to take to get ahead of it." She paused, listened, then said, "Okay. So we call Denver non-emergency and request an officer to take a statement. Thank you." She hung up and looked at me. "Grab your ID," she said, "and your phone, and your charger. You're going to tell them exactly what happened." My throat was so tight I could barely speak. "They're going to think I did it?" Sharon stared at me like I'd said something crazy. "They're going to think whatever the paperwork tells them. So we give them our paperwork." That sentence lodged in my chest. Because it wasn't about convincing anyone with tears. It was about building a file that could stand up in a room where feelings don't matter. Sharon dialed again. This time, I heard the automated voice, then a real person. She requested an officer to come out. She gave her address. She said the words "domestic situation" in a way that was careful but clear. Then she turned the phone screen toward me and whispered, "We're doing this right." Cold truth. Doing it right is still terrifying. We sat in quiet for 20 minutes. Sharon kept checking the front window, then checking the locks, then checking her phone. I kept staring at my own because it felt like if I looked away, something worse would pop up and I'd miss it. At 1:38 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Are you okay? I'm awake. Don't be alone." I stared at it until the tears came hot and immediate. Sharon saw my face and said, "What?" I showed her. She read it and nodded once. "Good, he's not asleep, neither are we." Then another buzz. A new email came in from Tessa Nguyen. Subject: requested document copies. My stomach flipped again because my brain was now trained to fear every notification. I opened it. It was short and professional. "Diane, Evan asked me to send you copies of relevant items for your records. Please confirm a safe email address to receive attachments." Safe email address. Of course. My regular email was on a family iPad Grant controlled. I'd been stupid for years. I'd thought it didn't matter. It mattered. Sharon slid her laptop toward me. "Use mine for now. New email, new password. Do it." So I created one right there at Sharon's kitchen table. Hands shaking. When I hit create, it felt like stepping into a new identity. Not a fake one. Just one that belonged to me. I emailed Tessa from the new address and wrote, "Send here. Thank you." Then I took screenshots of the email thread and saved it. Another receipt, another breadcrumb. At 2:11 a.m., headlights swept across Sharon's front window. Sharon didn't flinch. She opened the front door before the knock even landed. 2 officers stood on the porch, 1 man, 1 woman. Both looked tired in that late-night way, but not cruel. Just practical. Sharon introduced herself and said she's here, she's safe, she's being accused. The female officer looked at me gently and said, "Ma'am, can we come in?" I nodded and stepped back. We sat in Sharon's living room, under a lamp that made everything feel too bright. The male officer asked for names, dates of birth, addresses. I answered like I was reading someone else's life off a form. Then the female officer turned to me and asked, "Tell me what happened tonight." So I did. I told her about the gala, the grip on my arm, the attorney's office, the confidentiality addendum, the tracker, the drained account, the threat about police, the portal notification. I didn't try to make it poetic. I kept it blunt. Because the moment you get dramatic, people think you're exaggerating. And I couldn't afford that. When I finished, the male officer asked, "Do you have any documentation?" I opened my phone folder, coupons, and showed them. The screenshot of Evan's first text. The screenshot of the Chase new device signed in alert. The photo of the tracking device looking square on my windshield. The email from Grant, "You're making this worse." The attorney office directory photo. And the portal notification of the report. The male officer nodded slowly like he was building a mental checklist. The female officer looked at my arm. "Do you have injuries?" I pulled my sleeve up. The bruise looked ugly under the lamp, like proof that didn't care about my pride. The female officer's face tightened. "Did he do that?" "Yes," I whispered. She nodded once. "Okay." Then she asked the question that made my stomach flip. "Do you want to file a report for domestic violence?" I froze, because saying yes felt like setting my entire life on fire. Saying no felt like inviting the fire back into my bed. Sharon spoke first. "She needs to know her options." The female officer nodded. "You can choose. You can also request an information-only report tonight and decide about charges later. But I will tell you, the earlier you document, the better. Document. Always document." I swallowed hard. "Information only," I said. "Tonight." The officer nodded and took notes. She asked a few more questions, practical ones. Then she looked at me and said, "If your husband comes here, you call 911. If he tries to force contact, you call. Do you understand?" "Yes." The male officer added, "Regarding the theft/fraud allegation, an online report doesn't mean charges. It means it goes into a queue. But if he's making false reports to retaliate, that is something we note." False reports. Retaliation. Words I'd never thought would be attached to my marriage. They gave Sharon a case number for the information-only report. Sharon wrote it down in her notebook like she was collecting ammunition. When the officers left, Sharon locked the door, double-checked the windows, then turned to me and said, "Okay, that's step one." I sank onto the couch, exhausted in a way I can't even explain, like my bones were tired. My phone buzzed again. Tessa. She'd replied to my new email address already. Subject: Attachments for your records. There were 3 PDF attachments. I stared at them like they were radioactive. Sharon leaned over my shoulder. "Open!" My fingers shook as I tapped the first one. It was a scan of Grant's email to the private investigator, the one Evan showed me earlier, except this version had more pages. Dates, threads, a whole back and forth. Grant wasn't just telling someone to stop searching. He was paying someone to interfere. I scrolled and felt cold creep up my spine. One line made my stomach flip so hard I thought I might throw up. Grant had written, "She's with me. She doesn't want to be found. If you contact her again, I'll pursue harassment charges." Lie. Clean lie. The second attachment was a scan of the brief meeting email chain from Tessa, including the timestamps and the hotel location. The third attachment was labeled R. Blackwell, personal file, excerpt. My lungs locked. Sharon said quietly, "That's it." I opened it. The first page was a cover sheet, Diane Whitaker, background/risk notes. My hands went numb. The page below was typed in an old-fashioned way, not just corporate, personal. Richard Blackwell's handwriting was scanned along the margins in dark ink. I read the first paragraph and felt my stomach drop out. Richard had written that I was unstable and manipulative, that I pursued Evan for his family's status, that I disappeared with property. Property. There it was again. Sharon's voice went sharp. What property? I kept scrolling, heart banging. Then I hit the line that made me gasp so loud, Sharon whipped her head toward me. Richard had listed an item. An emerald ring. My emerald ring. He wrote it like it was an asset, like it was an inventory number. He claimed it belonged to the Blackwell family and had been taken when I left. My vision blurred. Sharon said, "That ring." "I have it," I whispered. "It's in my house, in a box. I kept it." Sharon stared at me. "So he's accusing you of stealing an heirloom." Heirloom? That word made my skin crawl. Because that ring wasn't an heirloom. Evan bought it. Evan gave it to me. It wasn't Richard's to claim. But Richard had written the file, and Grant was now using the file like it was gospel. I scrolled further, and Richard's notes got worse. He described me like a con artist. He wrote about legal exposure. He wrote about reputational risk. He wrote that Evan was vulnerable to sentiment and needed to be protected from her. From me. I felt something inside me crack, and it wasn't sadness. It was rage. Not messy rage. Clear rage. Because this wasn't just Grant being controlling. This was a story built about me, without me, and used to cage me for decades. Sharon grabbed my phone gently. "Screenshot. Save. Email it to me. Email it to yourself." I did, hands shaking. Then I stopped and stared at a date stamped on one of the pages. Richard's file had been updated 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Richard had been messing with my life recently, not just in the past. I whispered, he was still doing this. Sharon's voice went flat, which means someone was feeding him information. My stomach turned. Someone. Grant. Or someone else. Evan texted again. "Tessa sent you the file. Are you seeing it?" I wrote back yes. "He claims I stole the ring. He paints me like a criminal." Evan replied instantly. "That ring was mine. I bought it. I can prove it." I blinked hard. "How?" Evan, receipt. Insurance rider, jeweler records. My counsel already requested copies. Receipt. That word suddenly felt like oxygen. Because if Evan could produce the original purchase record, then Richard's claim collapses. And if Richard's claim collapses, Grant's police report becomes retaliation built on a lie. Mini twist. For the first time, Grant's paperwork didn't look unbeatable. It looked sloppy. But the damage was already moving. My phone buzzed again. Different number. Unknown. I stared at it. Sharon said, "Don't." I didn't answer. It went to voicemail. A moment later, a text from the unknown number popped up. "Diane, it's Grant. Answer." My skin went cold. He'd found a way around being blocked. He always finds a way. Sharon reached over and turned my phone to airplane mode for a second, then back on. "Take screenshots of everything," she said. "Then we block this number too." I took the screenshot of the text. Receipt. Then Sharon blocked it. I sat there shaking, staring at Richard's file excerpt on my screen. Sharon said softly, "What else is in there?" I scrolled again. Richard had written something about a medical situation, something about risk to family name, something about a discreet resolution. My throat tightened so hard it hurt, because I knew what he meant without him spelling it out. And I hated that he still had power over me through a few typed lines. Sharon's voice changed. "Diane, what happened back then?" I swallowed, and my hands started shaking in a different way. I said, I don't want to talk about it. Sharon nodded. Okay, but if Grant is using this, we don't get the luxury of avoiding it forever. I stared at the floor. Then my phone buzzed again, this time an email from Evan. Subject: Ring purchase record attached. I opened it like my life depended on it. Because it did. There it was. A scanned receipt from a jeweler. Evan's name. A date from decades ago. The ring description: emerald, cut, setting. The amount. The insurance rider document with a policy number. My eyes flooded immediately. Not because it was romantic. Because it was proof. Sharon said, "Save it, print it." I forwarded it to my new email, then to Sharon, then took screenshots, then saved it to my photos. Receipt. Weapon. Evan texted, "This destroys his narrative. If Grant filed a report claiming you stole it, we respond with proof of purchase." I typed back, "He'll still try. He'll say it was family property. He'll twist it." Evan replied, "Let him. Twisting doesn't work against documents." Sharon leaned back and exhaled hard. Okay, now we counter. Counter. That word made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly. Agency. Sharon pulled out her notebook and wrote at the top, "Grant's claims versus proof." Then she drew a line down the middle like she was building a case file for court. Left side, Diane stole ring. Right side, purchase receipt plus insurance rider in Evan's name. Left side, Diane, unstable/manipulative. Right side, police info report for bruising plus threats plus financial control. Left side, Diane hiding/sneaking. Right side, tracker photo plus attorney confidentiality attempt. Mini twist. My life stopped being just a mess. It started looking like a pattern. A documented one. Around 7:30 a.m., Sharon finally got a lawyer on the phone. Not a best friend's cousin, not a guy who does wills. A real family law attorney who sounded awake and competent and didn't baby me. She asked for the basics, then said, "Do not speak to your husband. Do not return to the marital residence alone. Preserve evidence. You may be eligible for a protection order. Regarding the theft allegation, we can proactively provide documentation to law enforcement if needed." Proactively. That was the shift. Instead of waiting for the hammer, we picked it up first. The attorney told me to write a sworn statement of the bruise and the threats and the financial control. Sharon sat beside me while I wrote, correcting me when my words got too emotional. "Write facts," she kept saying. "Write what happened, not what it felt like." That was hard, because what it felt like was the whole point, but facts are what get taken seriously. I wrote, "Grant Whitaker grabbed my arm at the hotel and pulled me. Bruising visible next day. He threatened attorney action. He drained account. He installed a tracking device in my vehicle. He submitted an online theft/fraud report against me after I left the residence." I attached screenshots. I printed the ring receipt. I printed the portal report notification. Sharon put everything in a folder. Not just a folder, a weapon. At 10:05 a.m., Sharon's doorbell rang. My blood turned to ice. Sharon looked through the peephole and muttered, "Of course." She opened the door a crack, chain still latched. Grant stood on her porch, dressed like a man going to a meeting, face calm, holding a paper in his hand like a peace offering. Behind him, a Denver police cruiser was parked at the curb. My stomach flipped. Sharon didn't open the chain. Grant smiled. "Morning." Sharon's voice was flat. "You're not coming in." Grant lifted the paper. "I'm just here to retrieve my wife. She's confused." Sharon laughed once, sharp. "She's not property." Grant's smile tightened. The male officer stepped forward slightly. "Ma'am, we're here for a welfare check Mr. Whitaker requested." Sharon cut in. "She's safe. She's in my house. She's choosing to be here." The officer glanced past Sharon, trying to see inside. I didn't hide. I stepped into view. My heart was hammering, but I made myself stand tall. I held the folder in my hands like a shield. The officer looked at me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "Yes," I said, "and I'm not going with him." Grant's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice smooth. "Diane, let's not do this in front of—" I cut him off, and my voice surprised even me. "You filed a theft report against me?" Grant blinked once, like he didn't expect me to say it out loud. Then he smiled, slow, "Because you took something that isn't yours." The officer's posture changed slightly. "Sir, that's a separate matter." Grant shrugged like he was reasonable. "I'm just trying to handle this properly." I held up the folder and said, "I have proof that the item you're accusing me of taking was purchased by Evan Blackwell, not your family." Grant's eyes flashed. "There you go, using him." I looked at the officer. "He is using law enforcement to retaliate because I refused to sign a confidentiality agreement yesterday." The officer's eyebrows lifted. That word did something. It flagged something. Sharon stepped aside just enough to let the officer see me clearly. The officer asked, "Do you have injuries?" I pulled my sleeve up, just enough. Grant's face hardened for a split second before he smoothed it again. The officer's eyes went to the bruise, then back to me. "Did your husband do that?" Grant snapped. "That's ridiculous." I didn't look at Grant. I looked at the officer and said, "Yes." The air changed. The officer glanced at Grant, then back at me. "Ma'am, do you want to speak privately?" "Yes," I said immediately. Grant's smile turned sharp. "Oh, come on." Sharon's voice cut like a blade. "Back up, Grant." The officer stepped onto the porch, positioning himself between Sharon's doorway and Grant like a quiet barrier. I spoke softly, quick, factual. I told him about the attorney, the tracking photo, the drained account, the online report. I handed him the printed screenshots and the ring purchase record. He took them, actually read them, and his face went more serious. Then he asked me, "Are you requesting a protection order?" My throat tightened. Because this was it, the line. If I said yes, Grant's behavior escalated. If I said no, Grant learned he could keep hunting. Sharon's hand rested on my back, steady. I swallowed and said, "Yes." Grant heard it anyway. His head snapped toward me like I'd slapped him. "You're kidding," he said, voice low and dangerous. The officer turned to Grant. "Sir, you need to step back." Grant laughed, but it was dead. "This is insane." Then Grant's eyes locked on mine, and he said something that made my blood go cold. "You're going to regret this." The officer's voice sharpened. "Sir." Grant held up his hands like he was the victim. Fine, I'll leave." But as he stepped off the porch, he looked at Sharon and said, "When this goes to court, I hope you're ready to explain why you helped her commit fraud." My stomach dropped. He wasn't letting go of that accusation. He was doubling down. Grant walked to his BMW, parked a few houses down. Of course he didn't park right in front. Of course he wanted the drama, and got in. Before he drove off, he rolled the window down and called out, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "She stole from the Blackwells." Then he sped away. My knees almost buckled. Sharon muttered, "That man is trash." The officer asked me to come with him to the station to start the protection order process and to formally document the bruise with photos. Sharon grabbed her keys. "I'm driving." In the car, my phone buzzed again. A text from Evan, "Are you okay? I'm hearing he's making noise." I typed, "He showed up with police. I requested a protection order. He's claiming fraud." Evan replied, "Good. Stay with Sharon. My counsel is filing a response to the theft allegation with the ring receipt today." Then he added, "Also, my mother wants to speak to you. Elaine Blackwell." My stomach flipped again. I stared at the message. Evan wrote, "She's nervous, but she said she owes you a conversation." That changed everything. Mini twist. The woman who'd been a ghost in my life for 30 years was suddenly stepping forward. And if Elaine wanted to talk, it meant Richard's file wasn't the whole story. At the station, they took photos of my bruise. They logged my statement. They gave me forms. It was boring and humiliating and necessary. When we got back to Sharon's, I sat at her kitchen table again with a stack of paperwork and the folder of receipts like my life had turned into a lawsuit. Sharon made me eat toast. I barely tasted it. At 2:20 p.m., Tessa emailed again. Subject: additional excerpt, R. Blackwell file. My stomach clenched. I opened it. It was one page, scanned, with Richard's handwriting in the margins. And there, in the middle of the typed paragraph, was a sentence that made my hands go cold. Contact G. Whitaker, reliable. Grant. Richard had written Grant's name in his personal file. Not as a threat, as a partner. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't breathe. Sharon saw my face. What? I slid the phone toward her. She read it, and her expression turned to stone. They knew each other, she whispered. I nodded, throat tight. This isn't just my husband being jealous. This is coordination. Sharon's voice went flat. He didn't just marry you, he managed you. That sentence landed like a punch. Because, yes, it explained too much. The constant control, the isolation, the way Grant always seemed to know exactly which buttons to press. I stared at the scan again, and my eyes caught something else. Another handwritten note from Richard, like an instruction to himself. Keep her quiet. Keep Evan focused. No scandal. No scandal. My stomach rolled. Whatever happened back then wasn't just a family fight. It was a cover-up. I felt my hands start shaking, and I had to press them flat on the table. Sharon said, Diane, if Grant and Richard were in contact, there's a trail. Trail. Paper. Emails. Calls. Bank transfers. And then I remembered the bank transfer exhibit Evan mentioned, the thousands moving quietly. My brain snapped into place. What if, I said slowly, Grant got paid? Sharon's eyes widened. Paid for what? For keeping me invisible, I whispered. For stopping Evan's search. For doing what Richard wanted. Sharon stared at me, then grabbed her laptop. Okay, then we look. We couldn't access the joint Chase account. Not directly. But we didn't need to, if Grant had left fingerprints somewhere else. Sharon pulled up the county records website. She searched Grant's name, she searched business filings, she searched anything that looked like a shell company. After 10 minutes, she found something. A registered LLC. Not a glamorous one, a bland, boring name that sounded like a consulting company. The kind of thing nobody notices. Grant was listed as the registered agent. My skin went cold. Sharon clicked through and found a PDF attachment from a civil case. Older, buried, but still accessible. Exhibits. There were pages of bank transfer receipts attached. Chase transfers. Dates. Amounts in the thousands. And then, there it was again. A name in the memo line that made my throat close. Blackwell. Not Evan's name. Richard's. I felt like I was going to throw up. Sharon whispered, "Holy." I cut in, voice shaking. Screenshot it. Sharon did. She saved the PDF. She downloaded it. She emailed it to herself and to me. Receipt. Weapon. This wasn't a feeling. This wasn't a suspicion. It was a document filed in a court case that had nothing to do with me, sitting out in the open like a loose thread. And now we had it. Mini twist. Grant wasn't just controlling me. He'd been making money while doing it. My phone buzzed again. Evan calling. I answered, voice shaky. Hi. Evan's voice was tight. Tessa forwarded me what she sent you. Diane, Richard listed Grant as a contact. That means it's bigger than I thought. My throat tightened. We found a civil case exhibit. Chase transfers. Richard's name in the memo line. There was a pause. Then Evan said, "Send it, now." I forwarded the PDF and the screenshot. Evan's voice went low. "Okay, that's it." "That's what," I whispered. Evan said, "That's proof of a financial relationship. That's proof of motive. My counsel can subpoena more." Subpoena. Another word that sounded like power. Evan continued, "Diane, I need you to listen carefully. My mother wants to meet you tonight. She's willing to bring the full file, not an excerpt, the entire thing. My heart slammed. The entire file, I whispered. Evan said, yes, and there's something else. Of course there was. Evan's voice tightened. Marcus Reed called me. He said Grant approached him months ago, asked questions about me, about the gala, about whether I'd show up. My stomach dropped. Grant didn't just react to the gala, he anticipated it. He planned to put me in that room. He wanted Evan to see me. Why? Evan said, Marcus didn't realize what it meant until last night. He said Grant was fishing. Fishing. For a hook. For a moment. For leverage. My skin went cold. So he set me up. Evan's voice was grim. It looks like it. Mini twist. The gala wasn't just my humiliation. It was Grant's trap, built to spring in public, where he could control the narrative. Sharon mouthed, oh my God, and I could see her thinking 10 steps ahead. Evan said, Elaine will meet you at my hotel suite. Security will be present. Sharon can come. You stay in public areas until you're with my team. My throat tightened. Grant will find out. Evan replied, let him. That confidence again. This time, it didn't irritate me, it steadied me. Because for the first time, Grant wasn't the only one with a plan. We got to the hotel around 7:10 p.m. Sharon insisted on driving her own car. She didn't want my Camry anywhere near this, not with the tracker unknown. The hotel lobby felt different than it did yesterday. Yesterday I'd walked in like a woman asking permission to exist. Today I walked in with a folder of evidence and a police case number and a friend who looked like she'd bite. Tessa met us near the elevators. She was smaller than I expected, sharp-eyed, hair pulled back, wearing a blazer-like armor. She said, Diane, Sharon, thank you for coming. Her gaze flicked to my arm. I could tell she saw it even under my sleeve. She didn't ask. She just nodded once like she understood the assignment. We took the elevator up. My stomach was doing that ugly flip-flop the whole way. When the doors opened, Tessa led us down a quiet hallway. Evan stood outside his suite, not inside, outside, like he didn't want me stepping into a private room without a choice. That detail made my throat tighten. He said hi, and his voice sounded like he'd been holding his breath all day. Sharon stayed slightly behind me, a steady presence. Evan opened the suite door and stepped back, letting me enter first if I wanted. I walked in. The suite was calm, clean, too expensive for my life. And there, sitting on a sofa with her hands folded in her lap, was Elaine Blackwell. She stood when she saw me. She was older, yes, but still elegant in that quiet way, gray hair styled neatly, pearls at her throat. Her eyes were the same color as Evan's. That hit me like a strange little echo. Elaine looked at me for a long moment, and then she said, Diane. Just my name. Not Mrs. Whitaker. Not that woman. Just Diane. My voice came out thin. Mrs. Blackwell. Elaine shook her head once, almost angry. No, not that. She stepped closer, and I braced myself for accusation, for coldness, for the kind of judgment that makes you feel like a stain. Instead, Elaine's eyes filled with tears. She said, I am so sorry. I froze. Because that wasn't the script Richard wrote. Elaine reached down beside the sofa and lifted a heavy binder onto the coffee table with both hands. A binder. Tabbed, labeled, thick. She pressed her palm on top of it like she was pinning down a snake. She said, This is everything Richard kept, all of it, and before you open it, you need to know something. My heart hammered. Evan stepped closer, jaw tight. Elaine looked at me and said, voice shaking, Richard didn't just write lies about you. He paid people to make them true. My stomach dropped. Elaine continued, and Grant Whitaker was one of them. The room went silent. I stared at Elaine, breath locked. Sharon whispered, Oh my God. Elaine's voice hardened, grief turning into something sharper. Grant came to us. He presented himself as a solution. He said he could keep you stable, quiet, out of Evan's life. I felt like the floor shifted. Evan's hands curled into fists at his sides. Elaine swallowed and said, "And Richard," her voice cracked. Richard wanted control more than he wanted his son happy. Then Elaine looked down at the binder and said the sentence that made my blood go cold. "There is a signed agreement in here." Signed agreement. My throat tightened. Between who? Elaine lifted her eyes to mine. "Between Richard and Grant," she said, "with your name on it." My pulse slammed. "With my name on it?" I whispered. Elaine nodded, slow. "Richard claimed you signed it. Grant claimed you signed it. It says you agreed to disappear." Disappear? My hands went numb. Because I never signed anything like that. Never. Evan's voice turned dangerous. "Mom." Elaine flinched, then said, "I didn't know what it was back then. I didn't. I believed Richard when he said you were unstable and dangerous. I believed him when he said this was for everyone's good." Her eyes filled again, and I was wrong. My throat burned. "Show me." Elaine opened the binder. She flipped to a tab near the front, fingers shaking, and pulled out a document in a clear sleeve. She slid it across the table toward me. I stared at the page, at the printed words, at the signature line. And then my eyes dropped to the signature. My name, in handwriting that looked like mine, but wasn't. It was close enough to fool someone who wanted to be fooled. My stomach lurched. Sharon hissed under her breath, "Forgery." Evan's voice went low. "That's not her signature." Elaine nodded, tears spilling now. "I know." I stared at that forged name until my vision blurred. Because suddenly, Grant's fraud accusation made sense. He wasn't accusing me of stealing the ring. He was trying to distract from the fact that he'd been forging me for years. I reached out and touched the clear sleeve like it might burn me. Then I looked up and my voice came out barely there. "That's what he meant," I whispered, "when he said he'd tell you what I really am." Evan's eyes were locked on the page, jaw clenched. Elaine whispered, "Diane, I brought this because I can't live with it anymore." Tessa stepped forward quietly and set a scanner device on the table like she'd been waiting for this moment. She said, "If Diane agrees, we can digitize everything tonight." I couldn't breathe. Because this was the weapon. A forged agreement. A money trail. A file full of lies with real signatures attached. And Grant had just filed a police report accusing me of fraud. He wasn't just trying to scare me. He was trying to preempt the truth. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even have to look to know. Sharon did anyway. She glanced at my screen and her face went tight. "Grant," she whispered. I stared at the binder, at my name forged on a page like a stamp. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. Evan said softly, "Don't answer." I didn't. The call went to voicemail. A second later, my email chimed. A new message. From Grant. Subject, "You're done." I swallowed, opened it with shaking fingers, and the first line hit me like a slap. "I've already sent copies of your agreement to Denver PD." I stared at the screen, cold all over. He wasn't waiting. He was moving. And now the question wasn't whether Grant would escalate. He already had. The question was whether we could move faster than his lie. Because the next knock on Sharon's door might not be a welfare check. It might be handcuffs. And I knew, right then, I was about to find out how deep Grant's paper trap really went. Evan didn't even blink when I showed him Grant's email. He read it once, jaw tight, then handed my phone back like it was evidence at a trial, because it was. "Tessa," he said, voice low, "scan the agreement page first, then the cover sheet, then anything with dates or signatures." Tessa was already moving, no drama. Just competence. Elaine sat down hard on the sofa like the air had finally left her lungs. She kept rubbing her thumb along her wedding ring like she was trying to erase time. Sharon leaned close to me and whispered, We're not faster than his lie by yelling. We're faster by filing. That sentence steadied me. Because Grant's whole game was panic. If I panicked, he won. If I got loud, he could call me unstable. If I cried, he could call me manipulative. So I straightened my shoulders and did the least romantic thing imaginable. I opened my dentist office contact and called Evan's security number. A man answered on the second ring. Blackwell Security. "This is Diane," I said, voice shaking anyway. "My husband filed a fraud report. He's claiming there's an agreement with my signature. It's forged." "Understood," he said, calm. "Are you in a secure location?" "Yes." "Do you have transportation?" "Yes, but the vehicle may be tracked." "Copy. Stay inside. We'll coordinate." I hung up and realized my hands were trembling. Evan looked at me. "You're not alone." Simple, direct. And for once, it didn't feel like a phrase people say to make themselves feel better. It felt like a plan. Tessa finished scanning the first pages and emailed them to my new address and Sharon's, then to Evan's counsel, with the subject line, "Urgent, forged signature / retaliatory report." I watched the email sent like it was a lifeline, drifting across water. Receipt. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. "Last chance, come home, or I'll make sure you leave in cuffs." I stared at the screen until Sharon snatched my phone and took a screenshot. "Block," she said, and she did it with a thumb like she'd been waiting her whole life to block a man like Grant. Another truth landed right then, clear and cold. Grant wasn't calling because he loved me. He was calling because he was losing control of the story. Evan's phone rang. He answered, listened for a few seconds, then nodded slowly. He hung up and looked at all of us. "My attorney got through to a supervisor at Denver PD," he said. "They're not going to take a forged document from an angry husband at face value. They want to see the original." Elaine flinched. "The original is here." Evan nodded. "Then we deliver it the right way?" Sharon leaned forward. "Meaning?" Evan said, "Meaning we don't hand it to Grant, we don't email him, we don't argue. We walk it into the station with counsel and we let them log it." Sharon exhaled hard. "Okay, we can do that." Then Evan turned to me, eyes steady. "Diane, I need you to decide something." My stomach tightened. "What?" He said, "Do you want to go on record tonight about the forgery and the coercion, or do you want to wait until morning with your lawyer?" Waiting sounded safe. Going on record sounded like stepping into traffic. But I remembered the portal notification, the accusation already moving through a queue like a machine. If I waited, I'd be chasing his lie instead of leading the truth. I swallowed. "Tonight." Evan's face softened for half a second. "Okay." Elaine stood up slowly, like her knees hurt. "I'm coming." Evan looked surprised. "Mom." Elaine lifted her chin. I sat quiet for too long. I'm done being quiet. That was a mini twist I didn't see coming. Because in my head, Elaine was always going to be Richard's shadow. I never pictured her choosing me over his file. Tessa gathered the binder, the printed ring purchase receipt, and the scanned copies in a folder. Sharon grabbed my tote bag like it was her own. Evan put a hand lightly at my back, not pushing, just steadying. And then, like we were walking into weather, we left the suite. We didn't take the Camry. Blackwell Security drove us in a plain SUV with tinted windows. It felt ridiculous, honestly, like I'd accidentally wandered into somebody else's rich life. But the truth is safety, no matter how it arrives. At the Denver police station, everything was fluorescent and tired. The same vibe as earlier. Forms, counters, people waiting with their own disasters. Evan's attorney met us there. A woman, sharp suit, calm eyes, carrying a slim briefcase like she could cut through nonsense with it. She introduced herself to me and said, "Diane, I'm here to make sure your statement is taken and your evidence is logged." Logged. God, I loved that word. We sat in a small interview room. The attorney spoke first, laying out the timeline in clean sentences. Retaliatory report filed, forged signature presented, supporting documentation attached, ring purchase record contradicting the theft narrative, evidence of coercion and control. Then the officer looked at me and asked, "Ma'am, do you swear this statement is true?" My throat tightened. "Yes," I said, "I do." I told them, again, the facts. I showed them the bruise photos from earlier. I showed them the screenshots. I showed them the new threatening text. And then I watched the officer's face change when he looked at the forged signature. He didn't say much. Cops who've been doing this long don't give away their thoughts. But he did say one thing that made my stomach unclench a fraction. "We will submit this for review," he said. "Forgery is serious." Grant had been tossing that word fraud around like a weapon. Hearing forgery said in an official tone felt like the ground shifting under him. Receipt. When we walked out of the station, it was past midnight again. Denver was quiet in that cold, empty way cities get when most people are asleep and the streetlights feel too bright. I stood outside the station doors with my arms crossed against the chill and realized something. Grant had always moved me from room to room, kitchen, car, attorney office, bedroom, like a piece on a board. Tonight, I moved myself. And that mattered. Back at the hotel, Evan insisted Sharon and I take a separate room on the same floor. No keys exchanged, no weird move in with me fantasy. Just safety. Tessa handed me a key card and said, "If you need anything at all, text me, any hour." I stared at her. "Thank you." She nodded once, like gratitude was nice, but action was the point. Sharon and I got into the room and sat on the beds like two women who'd just survived a storm. Sharon looked at me and said, "You did it." I laughed once, weak. "I don't feel like I did anything." Sharon pointed at my phone. "You're not alone in a dark house waiting for him to decide what you're allowed to be. That's something." I nodded slowly. Then my phone buzzed. An email from Chase. Subject, alert, attempted password reset. My stomach clenched, but Sharon was already leaning in. "Screenshot?" she said. I did. The email included an approximate location, Denver area, and the timestamp. Grant was still trying, still clawing. Evan texted, "We got confirmation. Your statement is logged. Grant's report is flagged." Flagged. Another small shift. Then he added, "Go to sleep. Tomorrow we move." I stared at that last word. Move. It sounded like freedom. It also sounded like war. I didn't sleep much. I kept jolting awake to check my phone like it was a heartbeat monitor. By morning, Sharon had a coffee in her hand and that notebook open again, and I could tell she'd already decided we weren't going to waste daylight. We met with the family law attorney Sharon found, the one who didn't flinch at the words financial control and tracking device and retaliatory report. She walked me through a temporary protection order process. She explained the difference between civil and criminal. She told me what to expect at a hearing. No sugarcoating, no doom, just information. And then she said, "You need to retrieve personal belongings from the marital residence with law enforcement standby." My stomach twisted. Going back to that house felt like putting my head back into a lion's mouth. But I needed my clothes, my documents, and, most of all, the emerald ring, not because it was jewelry, because it had become the center of Grant's lie. I needed it in my possession the right way, documented. So we did it. That afternoon, a police officer met us outside my house. Grant wasn't there, at least not at first, but the air still felt heavy, like it remembered him. I walked up my own front steps and my hands started shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the lock. Sharon leaned in and whispered, "Breathe, eyes up." I got the door open. Inside, the house looked normal. That made it worse. Because a normal house can hide a lot. We went straight to the bedroom. I opened the jewelry box with the officer watching, and my fingers found the velvet box like they'd been magnetized. I opened it. Green light. Still there. I exhaled like I'd been underwater. The officer noted it, wrote it down, and watched me place the ring box into a clear plastic evidence-style bag the attorney provided, sealed, dated, initialed. Receipt. Weapon. Mini twist. I wasn't stealing it anymore. I was retrieving it under standby with documentation. We grabbed a week's worth of clothes, my passport, my birth certificate, the shoebox cash I'd stashed, and the little things that belonged to me before Grant. As we were leaving, Sharon stopped in the kitchen and took a photo of the empty spot where Grant kept his briefcase because my gut told me he'd already moved paperwork. I didn't even ask, I just let her. Another receipt. On the way out, my phone buzzed. Grant calling. I didn't answer. Then a text popped up from him. You think Blackwell can save you. He can't. I will bury you. I stared at it until the words lost meaning. Then I took a screenshot. Then I blocked him again. 2 days later, we were in a courthouse in Denver, sitting on a hard bench outside a courtroom that smelled like old wood and nerves. I wore a plain sweater and slacks, no makeup besides what covered the bruise, which had faded to a sickly yellow-green now. Grant walked in with his attorney like he was arriving at a business luncheon. Calm face, crisp suit. That polished mask he used to charm people into believing he was reasonable. He looked at me once and smiled like we were sharing a private joke. I didn't smile back. I just sat there with my folder, my receipts, my truth. Evan was there too, not inside the courtroom at first, but nearby, quiet, present. His attorney sat with ours. Sharon sat with me like a wall. Grant's attorney tried to approach. Diane, maybe we can talk before the judge. My attorney cut him off. No direct contact. Grant's smile faded a fraction. He was used to walking into rooms where I was alone. Now he wasn't. Mini twist. His charm had no target. When we went in, the judge listened to both sides. Grant's attorney tried to paint me as emotional, confused, influenced by a wealthy businessman with an agenda. I could have laughed if my stomach wasn't in knots. Then my attorney spoke, and it was like watching someone turn on a light. She presented the screenshots, the tracking photo, the bank alert, the confidentiality addendum title page, the threatening texts. The officer's information-only report number from Sharon's house, the logged statement about the forged agreement. Then she held up the ring purchase record, Evan's receipt and insurance rider, and the judge's expression shifted, because paper hits different. Grant's attorney tried to object. He tried to say it was irrelevant. He tried to say the ring was, quote, family property. Evan's attorney stood and said, Your Honor, the purchase record is in my client's name. The insurance rider is in my client's name. The jeweler confirms the sale. The allegation of theft is demonstrably false. Grant's jaw tightened. The judge looked directly at Grant and asked, Sir, did you file a theft/fraud report against your wife? Grant's voice was smooth. Yes, Your Honor. Because she took property. The judge raised a hand. You filed a report accusing her of fraud while simultaneously attempting to have her sign a confidentiality addendum. That concerns me. Concerned. That one word felt like a door opening. The judge granted the temporary protection order. Limited contact, stay away distance, no harassment, no tracking. I sat there, blinking, because part of me still expected the universe to side with him. It had for so long. Grant's face went still. He didn't explode in court. He wasn't stupid. He just looked at me with an expression that promised the fight wasn't over. But it didn't matter what he promised. There were boundaries now. Court-ordered ones. Outside the courtroom, Sharon squeezed my hand and whispered, That's one. One, I echoed, and we both knew what she meant. One win. One layer peeled back. That same week, Denver PD contacted my attorney. They'd reviewed Grant's report and my evidence. They weren't charging me. They wanted additional documentation about the forged agreement and the pattern of retaliation. Not charging me. That sentence felt like my lungs opening. Evan's counsel moved fast on their end, too. They filed a formal response with the department, attaching the purchase record, an insurance rider again, plus a letter from the jeweler confirming Evan's purchase, and a statement that Richard's claim of family property didn't align with any documented ownership. Receipt. Then the real shift happened. Tessa emailed me a document labeled PI File Search Interference. It was a full chain showing Grant's contact with a private investigator over years. It included invoices, paid invoices, amounts, dates. Grant didn't just interfere for free. He invested in my isolation. Evan's attorney used that, plus the civil case exhibit Sharon found with Chase transfers and Richard's memo line, to petition for subpoenas. I didn't pretend to understand all the legal mechanics. I just knew what it meant in normal human language. People were going to be forced to answer questions. And Grant couldn't control the narrative in a deposition. 2 months later, we sat in a different office. This one quiet and expensive and very much not a strip mall suite. Grant sat across a table from me in a deposition room, no judge, just attorneys and a court reporter typing every word like it mattered. Because it did. Grant's attorney kept trying to object. Grant kept trying to keep his face calm. But you can only hold a mask for so long when someone is reading your own emails back to you. Evan's attorney slid a page across the table. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, "is this your email address?" Grant hesitated. "Yes." She read his email aloud. "She's with me. She doesn't want to be found." Grant's throat moved. "That was?" The attorney cut in. "Answer yes or no. Did you send this?" Grant's jaw clenched. "Yes." There was a pause. A click of the court reporter's keys. Then the attorney pulled out another document. The scanned agreement page with my forged signature. "Mr. Whitaker," she said calmly, "did Diane sign this document in your presence?" Grant's eyes flicked to me, just once. Then he said, "Yes." My stomach turned, but my attorney's hand touched my forearm lightly under the table, grounding me. Evan's attorney didn't raise her voice. She just slid forward a forensic handwriting analysis report. Not a dramatic TV thing. A clean, boring expert report with comparisons. She said, "This report concludes the signature is not Diane's and shows evidence of simulation. Are you maintaining your sworn statement that she signed it?" Grant's face went gray at the edges. He opened his mouth, closed it. And for the first time in my entire marriage, I watched Grant realize he couldn't bully paper. He finally muttered, "I don't know." The attorney nodded once like she'd expected that. "So your answer is no." Grant snapped, "That's not what I said." The attorney looked at the court reporter. "Please read back his last answer." The court reporter did. Grant's lips pressed into a thin line. After that deposition, things moved fast in ways I didn't fully see. Attorneys do their attorney magic. Systems churn. But I saw the results. Grant's divorce posture changed overnight. The confident threats got quieter. The emails stopped. The texts stopped. His attorney started offering terms that looked less like a trap and more like damage control. Because now there were receipts showing he lied to police. Receipts showing he interfered with Evan's search. Receipts showing financial ties to Richard. And a forgery. At one point, I asked my attorney, "Is he going to be charged?" She didn't promise anything. She just said, "He's exposed." Exposed. That was enough. By late summer, the divorce was final. I kept my new bank account. I got a fair settlement, not a fantasy one. Grant fought money like it was oxygen, but a fair one. And the protection order stayed in place longer than he liked. On the day I signed the final paperwork, I sat in my car and stared at the courthouse doors and felt something strange. Not joy. Quiet. The quiet you get when a constant buzzing noise finally stops. Sharon met me at a little diner afterward, slid into the booth, and said, "You hungry?" I laughed, a real laugh this time. I forgot hunger existed. She grinned. "Welcome back." A week after that, Evan invited me to Blackwell Industries, not for a gala, not for a spectacle. for a job interview. I almost didn't go. Part of me still felt like I didn't deserve a real seat at a table. But Sharon looked at me and said, "Take your life back with both hands." So I went. And it wasn't weird. It was professional, it was calm, it was HR and benefits and normal questions about my skills and experience, like I was a person with a history beyond being someone's wife. They offered me a role in community relations, not a pity job, a real one, a paycheck, health insurance, independence. When I got the offer letter by email, I took a screenshot. Because that's who I am now. A woman who keeps proof of good things too. Receipt. Mini twist, my new life wasn't romance, it was stability. Evan didn't push. He didn't say, move in. He didn't say, we're meant to be. He just showed up consistently, quietly, like a man trying to earn trust, not buy it. Elaine and I met for coffee a few times. The first time, she cried. The second time, she apologized again, but with fewer tears and more honesty. The third time, she brought photos, old ones of Evan at 22, smiling like a boy who thought he had time. She said, "Richard took time from all of us." And I believed her. I still get angry sometimes. I still wake up some nights convinced I hear Grant's footsteps in a hallway that doesn't exist anymore. But then I roll over and see my own phone on my own nightstand, charging with a cord nobody can hide. I see my debit card in my wallet. I see my work badge. And I breathe again. The last time I saw Grant was in a grocery store parking lot, months after everything. I was loading bags into my Camry. Yes, my Camry, still running, still mine, and I felt that old instinct to shrink when I noticed him across the way. He looked thinner, meaner, like someone whose favorite toy got taken away. He stared at me for a long moment, then started walking toward me like he had something to prove. My heart sped up, but my feet stayed planted. He stopped a few feet away and said, "Lo, you think you won." I looked at him and felt something I didn't expect. Nothing. No love, no fear, no longing, no rage. Just blank. I said, "I'm not your game anymore." Grant's mouth tightened. "Blackwell paid for you." I smiled once, small. "You're the one who got paid, Grant. Remember?" His eyes flashed. He opened his mouth. Then he shut it. Because he knew. He knew what was in the file. He knew what the subpoenas dug up. He knew what the handwriting report said. He leaned closer, trying for intimidation. I didn't move back. Grant finally spat, "You ruined my life." I shrugged. "You did that. I just stopped covering for you." And then I got in my car and drove away. No shaking hands, no tears. Just me, driving through Denver in my own lane with my own keys, with the windows cracked open like I was learning air again. So yeah, that's how my husband tried to bury me with paperwork and accidentally handed me the proof that set me free. If you love karma stories where the villain's own receipts take them down, hit subscribe, because I've got more of these coming.